Pokemon have always been rumored to be eaten within the world of Pokemon, and in fact, when we look in the anime or games, we see that there are a number of them that are confirmed to be part of a delicious breakfast. From Clauncher claws to Appletun skin, and even making juice from the sweat of Bounsweet. There's a lot of Pokemon that are set upon our dinner plate, all to the point where Farfetch'd almost went extinct, but just how edible is every Pokemon? Well, after going through not only every single Pokemon, but also a number of their alternate forms, I have created the complete ranking of just how edible every single one of them are. Hi there, I'm Kurlik, and before we jump in immediately, here's how I broke everything down. Basically, is a Pokemon edible or not? I'm not biting onto rocks, I'm not biting onto steel, and honestly, I'm probably not going to be eating any humanoids either. Pokemon and humans were once one thing, and I'm sure there are going to be some complications if you decide to eat any human-shaped Pokemon, or at least any that are too closely related to us. Theoretically, you probably could eat them, but I did not want to consider them for this. In addition, are they worth eating? Are you gonna get sick? Are they gonna taste good? Are they too much work? And then the final part is just how tasty is a Pokemon ultimately? Like, am I gonna be able to resist the call of a Basculin? Because those are said to be absolutely delicious. Now, I won't be going into gruesome detail, such as explaining how to cook these Pokemon, as I just don't find that tasteful. Pun not intended, but I'll explain whether they're edible or not, and I'll not only give a little bit of my own opinion as to why I think they're so tasty, but also what any of their real-life counterparts might be and what is said about those when applicable. With that then, let's just begin with our first category. The ones that are inedible, and there's a lot here. I'm not going to be going through every single one. I'll talk about the key individuals within this section, but otherwise, if they're made up of rock, if they're made up of steel, if they are a ghost, you are probably not eating them. You cannot consume them. I do not care that a man slowly ate a plane over the course of, 20, 30 years, bit by bit? No. I want to sit down for one meal and properly process it. I'm pretty sure the plane just went through his body if you eat it small enough. No, I want to become full off of this meal. As such, we skip through a lot of them, and as we do go through, the ones that immediately catch my eye from the bottom up, if you want to look at the image that I do have within the description below, you'll find that one of the couple of first ones, we find Pecharunt, actually. Pecharunt itself is not an edible Pokemon, by all means. It is a Peach Pit. Peach Pitches are poisonous, so please do not eat those. Moving our way up, we move past a lot of our robotic Pokemon and find Chi-Yu and some of our other ruinous Pokemon. Chi-Yu in particular was actually a Pokemon that is made up of magma, whereas the rest of our ruinous Pokemon are not actually the entirety of the Pokemon, such as our big boy Moose is just the actual sacrificial bull that's there. You technically could eat mud, it is technically edible, but when you eat clay, especially in larger amounts, you should not do that. It will actually make you iron deficient, so please do not chew or eat clay, rather. Past a couple more, we do find our big ol' mushroom, the Brute Bonnet. Now, Brute Bonnet technically might be edible, but by all means, it might be based off of the big fungus that might have played a big part in actually wiping out the dinosaurs, and anything that did not have a protective coat or anything that could help resist it was something that was going to have problems surviving. So I'd rather not eat something that has the potential of being able to infect my body or kill me in that capacity. Other mushrooms may have a different story, of course. Glammet and Glamora are a very interesting individual. You do not want to eat them, even though they look like they could be made of more than just rock, as they may be made from Terra crystals on top of whatever structure they have going on in their body. In fact, they are known to be poisonous through and through, so you should not consume any part of them. Up next, though, is Earthworm, and something I do want to say right now is that anything in the inedible category is just inedible. I did not order them by which one is more or less inedible. They're all equally inedible to my eyes. If I cannot eat them, it does not matter. Now with Earthworm, you might be able to make the case that despite its shell, there might be something inside of it. It is considered a pure steel type, and it's kind of based off of bullet trains, so I question whether or not it's actually edible. Bramblin and Bramblegast are not actually edible, as they are the fully formed adults of tumbleweeds. Tumbleweeds themselves are an actual living plant that you can technically eat when they are in their adolescent stage. I don't say that it's necessarily recommended, but you could technically eat them, whereas again, Bramblin and Bramblegast are completely fully formed, dry, tumbleweeding all over the place Pokemon that are just waiting for more souls that are lost and trapped within, well, dried grass. The Treepy line in general, you cannot eat them either. They are pure ghosts, but I did at least want to state how it is fun to know that they will try to prey upon the Clauncher line, or the Clauncher duo, I do suppose, as they will bite them, but they can't really do anything to them. They're just kind of nibbling on them a little bit, not actually consuming them, and it's thought that within the Pokemon world, they used to prey upon them in prehistoric times before the Treepy line did go extinct and come back as a ghost-type Pokemon. An extra fun tidbit about Runerigus in specific, or even Galarian Yamask for that matter, is that, again, you're not going to eat them. They are stone, they are spirits, but you also just typically do not want to touch them at all, as if you do decide to touch them, you are going to be plagued with images that they want to show you cursed in that manner, or even force you to become another Yamask in eventual time, though that part is just theoretical. Looking at Blacephalon, it not only is humanoid and blows up its head and regrows it like it's nothing, I don't believe there's any sort of organs inside of that creature whatsoever. There's nothing that anybody can do to convince me that I can eat this exploding clown creature thing that just loves to dance. And it's a cool Pokemon all in all, but it also explodes its head into fireworks. So even if it did have something inside of its body, it's probably nothing but gunpowder, which is really cool, but also terrifying, and I'd rather not explode while eating. While Cosmog does have some sort of physical form to it, it is really just gas that is coalescing with energy and enough mass to eventually become a protostar, Cosmoem, and then so then it could eventually evolve into either Solgaleo or Lunala, being planetoids or celestial bodies within space itself, of course. Eating Cosmog would be like eating space dust. I don't imagine, despite its physical appearance, that it actually has some sort of actual physical body within our world, that it would be something that is actually edible. It's like trying to eat air. Morlul and Shiinotic, while again being mushrooms or fungi in general, are also based on bioluminescent mushrooms, and bioluminescent mushrooms in general are considered to be inedible by all means. Again, you could probably eat it, but it's not going to taste good, and it's not going to go down well, let alone it might be actually toxic and you can't cook that out, depending on the type of toxins and what creature it is, which we'll get to later. For Skrelp and Dragalge, technically seahorses are seen as a delicacy, but then so many of these Pokemon based on animals really are in certain parts of the world. Now, seahorses in particular sometimes might be fried or otherwise, and I don't understand why. They seem like they have zero meat on their bodies. They also seem like such frail creatures. And as far as Skrelp and Dragalge are specifically concerned, they are poisonous seahorses. In fact, many of our seahorses within the world of Pokemon are, even though there's only Horsea to add to this as well. But nevertheless, I'm keeping them in the inedible section because of this. Kyurem itself I deem inedible, not because it's absolute zero or that it's a dragon. In fact, I imagine many of the dragons would be absolutely delicious or have a flavor or texture unlike any other. In fact, the reason why Kyurem, and even Kyurem Black and Kyurem White, are kept within this section is because, to our understanding, Kyurem itself may be self-regulating its temperature to ensure that it doesn't completely freeze over. If Kyurem were to die, I imagine that whatever alternative organ that exists within its body that's fighting against its actual biological nature is going to completely freeze it over, and then we'll have a whole different problem to go with. As such, for the sake of humanity, we're going to say that Kyurem itself is not edible, and neither are Kyurem Black or Kyurem White. Fungus and Amoonguss very much remind me of Amanita mushrooms, which is probably what they're actually based on, considering their reddish cap and the white parts that are a part of them as well. And when we look at Amanita muscaria, It is a highly poisonous mushroom due to the fact that it contains psychoactive alkaloids, muscarine, iobotenic acid, and muscimol. Thank you, National Institute of Health, for that information. So do not eat the mushroom that will try to eat you. I kind of put Carablast here as well. I'm sure technically you probably could eat a tick, but why? Just why? Why would you even bother to eat a tick? And with Carablast and its evolution as Cavalier, it really doesn't change. It just steals Shelmet's armor and moves on with its life. Meanwhile, when we look at Solosis, it is a Pokemon that is a singular cell that is undergoing cell division, or at least its own form of cell division. The problem with Solosis is not the fact that you can't eat it, but rather the liquid that is within its shell, if you want to call it that, or its ectoplasm for that matter, is something that is incredibly toxic. The plus side, if you are ballsy enough to even try to eat it or drink that good goo, is that you may gain otherworldly knowledge or knowledge of everything right before you die. This is not something that you can cook out, and in fact, many toxins or poisons are not something you can legitimately cook out. One of those actually being mercury. Mercury is not something that you can cook out of fish. It is something that will stay in the fish. This is why things like tuna are considered incredibly dangerous if you eat incredibly high amounts. It's because tuna is a very big fish that feeds upon other fish. And when your small fish is already full of mercury, and that fish is eaten a lot by a bigger fish, and then bigger fish and bigger fish, that mercury just continues to build up until eventually it hits the biggest fish, being, well, whatever is in that area. In some cases, it is tuna, and as such, that's why they have so much mercury within their bodies, amongst many other fish having other chemicals that cannot be cooked out, or other toxins, rather, that cannot be cooked out. Do I have to explain why you don't want to eat Trubbish or Garbodor or G-Max Garbodor for that matter? It seems like an incredibly poor decision, especially as their fumes or their spray that they can hit you with when it is in its Garbodor form can make you go to the ER rather quickly. Croagunk and Toxicroak are based on poison dart frogs, and the first word of that should tell you everything that you need. Poison dart frog. I don't know why I had to repeat the whole thing there, but just for you in the back, make sure you're not eating poison dart frogs. In fact, according to National Zoo, scientists believe that poison frogs gain their poison from a specific arthropod and other insects that they eat in the wild, and that these insects most likely acquire the poison from their plant diet. So, very similar to our mercury situation that we just talked about, it is that buildup of poison within the body. Some species do use that to their advantage and have adapted to be able to excrete it through their body or use it in alternative ways. Another Pokemon in general that I'm not going to consider is any baby Pokemon. It just feels wrong. I'm not gonna look at a Happiny or a Mime Jr. and be like, oh yeah, fry that thing up on a grill. That's exactly what I want to eat for dinner. Give me the veal. No, I do not want to eat adolescent Pokemon. I do not want to eat adolescent animals. Give them a good long life. Let them live it up. Feed them good. Give them pastures. Let them live happily. And then before they end up getting really sick, before they suffer, go ahead and make them a meal, please. I assume that Shellos and Gastrodon are not going to be edible. I understand that slugs and or snails in general are an edible species, depending on which ones you get, and as long as you cook them properly or ensure that there are not parasites within their bodies. When I look at Shellos and Gastrodon, we know that they are basically weird little sponges that will excrete a purple goo whenever they are touched, whenever they're bitten, or anything along those lines, to then gum up your works. So unless you're properly removing that from their body, and there may be a lot of that goo within them, making it very not worth it or properly inedible, I think that they can stay within the inedible section here. Deoxys is literally the virus Pokemon, or sorry, it is the DNA Pokemon, but we understand it to be also the virus Pokemon. And it is a living virus, because again, I've said it in many videos before, but viruses are not an actual living thing, or not considered a living thing, despite many of their characteristics following a number of living characteristics. Deoxys is the living version of that. It will fight for its life, and while we are assuming that many of these Pokemon, or all these Pokemon, we are able to safely and ethically consume, I'm not interested in putting Deoxys into my mouth. It does not seem like a good idea. One that many people might argue for is that Reg Ice is something that is edible. To my knowledge, it not only does Reg Ice not melt, but I don't believe you can actually break down Reg Ice. I've never really seen it chip and crack and fall apart. I don't know if it's ever been said, like Reggie Rock, to restore its body through absorbing other ice. I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, fantastic. Get yourself some of that never melt ice, throw it in your drink. You're probably never actually consuming it, but at least your drinks will stay cold forever, and you won't have to have an ice maker or buy ice from the store or whatever it is you do. Maybe you take a trip to Antarctica every 7 years and get a pound of ice. Do not do that. That's terrible. The SnowRunts line are rocks. Despite them being ice types, despite them being creatures that eat things that are frozen or things that are made of ice, they are by all means rocks. We know this because Glalie says itself that it covers itself in an icy coating, whereas it is believed that its actual body is made up of rock. Frostlass, I will say, does scare me a little bit because its favorite frozen treat is the frozen souls of other people, or Pokemon for that matter, and more specifically, it does like to go after men. Lost on the Mountain? No thank you. Corphish and Crawdaunt, while technically are edible, they are specifically said to be Pokemon that have incredibly horribly tasting meat. As such, I'm keeping them within the inedible section, as nobody is even stupid enough to try and eat it, according to Pokemon. Swalot and Gulpin, I feel like, would be eating the world's worst haggis. Not to say I've ever had haggis myself, but the idea of the stomach Pokemon being a Pokemon that I eat does not sound good. It's also a poison type, not because it's actually poison, but because it is literally full of gastric acid, the stuff that you use to break down all of your food when you do put it inside of your body, whereas this is the entire stomach living by itself and can literally just stretch and eat anything that it really wants to. As such, I'm sure technically you probably could remove all the acid and try to eat its really rubbery, protective, stretchy, flexible body, but that sounds like an incredibly poor decision. Another that you might argue with is the fact that we do have the Badoo line here, and yes, you can make rose water. You're not eating roses. I will make arguments later on for making teas out of certain Pokemon, but I don't think it would be worthwhile to try and make rose water from these Pokemon, nor do you actually have to kill them in order to get those roses. You might find their petals come off on their own or during their attacks or anything along those lines. As such, it just feels like too much work, and I'm keeping them in the inedible section. Now, another Pokemon that is going to be rather inedible, not just because of taste, but actually because of a toxin within their body, is Volbeat and Illumis, based on their lightning bug, or whatever the heck you want to call it in your region of the world, origins. The chemical that is within a Firefly is not what makes it glow, but is similar to the toxins that poisonous toads use to deter predators. And while we are not toads, we can still be hurt by those toxic chemicals that they naturally have within their body. So let's just avoid eating these lightning bugs, especially since they— oh my god, just flashbang myself. Especially considering the fact that they in particular, I have found when we look at a route by route analysis of every single Pokemon and Pokemon region, we find them typically on the same routes as Roselia or Roserade, which Roserade isn't found in the wild, but bear with me, as they are respectful of their pollinating practices and do not hurt or kill each other. Sableye is a really weird one because Sableye is a ghost that does have an actual fully physical body. The problem with Sableye, though, is that it is made up of gems. In its Pokédex entries, it does reference the idea that you can find other forms of Sableye, and what gems they find on their body, or you will find on its body, is entirely dependent upon what gems they have eaten. So I imagine this could have been another ghost rock type. Wait, we don't have a ghost rock type Pokemon. I don't know if that'd be a good typing at all. I'm not super into the competitive scene by any means. I'm just really good at explaining Pokemon, but by all means, I do not believe we have a ghost rock type, and Sableye could have been a ghost rock type, which would have been pretty baller, but I understand the ghost dark typing. When we look at Shroomish and Breloom, despite Shroomish likely being based on a puffball mushroom, which those are fairly good to eat, I will not lie. Think of it like tofu. However you season it or however you flavor it in general is how it's going to turn out, and your biggest issue is just simply going to be texture. But despite it likely being based off of that, when we look at Shroomis's entries, it does state that the spores on its body are so toxic that they make trees and weeds wilt. Trees will wilt because of this Pokemon. As such, I do not believe it would be safe to even try to eat it, or Breloom for that matter. We'll find a reoccurring theme of scales being toxic within Pokemon such as Dustox for that matter, and yeah, sure, there is the chance that you could fry up some butterflies or moths, but if I remember correctly, most moths are considered inedible by all means, and you really just should not be eating them. In the case of Dustox here, its scales are so toxic that they are said to make even a pro wrestler sick. I'm also including a number of the cocoons of Pokemon in the inedible section. Once again, if you really want to, you could probably stick a straw in it and drink up that primordial juice that they have within their bodies. We've kind of only recently, to my knowledge or my understanding, I could be wrong, just started to even relatively understand how it works, and pretty much the entirety of the creature breaks down into a juice, a soup, essentially, with only one part of it being physical, a cell or a nucleus or whatever it is that is left behind. I'm super oversimplifying this. And then eventually the whole thing rebuilds itself from scratch within that chrysalis. I don't want to know how toxic that could be, considering many cells, when they break down or die, will release a ton of just toxic waste, or just waste in general, into the surrounding area. And typically, hey, maybe those can be eaten up by other cells, or those are taken up by other cells in order to not actually consume as part of themselves, but to clean up and remove as part of waste. And I don't want to know just how terrible it would be to drink the primordial juice of a bug when it is inside of its cocoon. The Larvitar line are really weird because they're kind of bugs or insects in general, and then they're also a big kaiju monster rock thing. I mean, when we look at how it evolves, it cocoons itself after eating enough dirt from, like, what, a mountain, essentially, and a mountain's worth of dirt. And then after it finishes with its cocoon, that cocoon becomes the center of Tyranitar, and then when you Mega Evolve Tyranitar, its back splits open. So it's kind of this eternal cocoon throughout its life, with nothing coming out after its Mega Evolution. But I fear what could have come out. Nevertheless, their bodies are so incredibly tough by all means that they don't actually fear being attacked by the time it does reach Tyranitar. I'm gonna assume that they're gonna be rock more than actual lizard, and that they are inedible. Please do not eat Corsola. Please do not eat Cursula. Neither of those are very good ideas. In fact, corals kind of need our help. The warming planet is incredibly horrible for them, as they are eventually bleaching, and that is what is causing a Galarian Corsola to actually occur. It's dead. It's a dead husk of what it was, and while there are coral polyps, which actually build up coral, I believe that they'd be no different than eating a maggot, and I'm not interested in putting that inside of my body. When it does evolve into Cursula, it is basically nothing but actual ectoplasm that is burst out. And if you even manage to touch it, you're dead. You're dead. You're getting turned to stone, Medusa style. Now, Slugma and Magcargo are interesting. They are made out of pure magma, but they are also based off of volcano scales, otherwise known as scaly-footed gastropods. Those are really, really cool-looking, well, I almost call them Pokemon because they seem like such unreal creatures, but they do exist. Now, I don't think anyone's tried to even eat them, nor should you, for that matter. They don't really actually eat anything themselves. Many scaly-foot gastropods will actually just subsist on the bacteria that exists within their bodies. That bacteria having a housing, being the actual scaly-foot gastropod, and then the gastropod being fed by the bacteria themselves and whatever they create within the body. And you might be thinking, oh, we have bacteria in our body. Why isn't our bacteria keeping us alive? Doesn't, technically we feed it, don't we? And the answer is no. No, we don't. Oh, I just knocked over. Oh, I just knocked. Okay. Hercules beetles, such as our Heracross here, you may be able to eat their larvae, but their adult forms are otherwise considered inedible. So I'll quickly move on to the Tsuchinoko, that is Dunsparce, and Dunsparce for that matter. For them, the Tsuchinoko in general, if I remember correctly, are considered not only poisonous, but also toxic creatures, which is, again, what Dunsparce is based on. They are really weird because Tsuchinoko will, like, drink alcohol, I believe they'll dig for mushrooms, but they kind of just disappear. And they are I almost call them a cryptid, which technically they are, but they're actually a yokai of sorts within Japanese mythology. They're not a real creature. So, being able to judge what a real or a false creature or a cryptid or whatever would taste like makes things really weird, but that's also the entire point of this entire video anyway. I've never eaten any of these Pokemon, but we'll get to some later on that I'd be very tempted to eat, and some that are irresistible to me. Wynots and Wobbuffet are punching bags. Do you want to take a bite of leather? Yes, I'm sure. The cowboys, when they absolutely had to, would rip off their shoes or boots, which had leather on them. You would go ahead and cook them, and hopefully they weren't chemically cleaned, because you may have additional problems from there, if I'm recalling correctly. Otherwise, if they are suntanned or other methods that are not chemical methods, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm sure they can get away with it just fine. I'm not interested in eating a punching bag, though. They're used for punching, not for eating. Ooh, here's a fun one. So, Blipbug's line. Now, it says nothing about whether it's edible or not, but in fact, many ladybugs are considered to have such a foul taste or smell, depending on which ones you're looking at, so much so that they are considered inedible. This would then doubly go so for our Ledyba and Ledyin Pokemon, making them all inedible Pokemon. Ditto is another weird one. You could argue and say, oh, I'll just tell Ditto to turn it into something and then I'll eat it. No. Ditto will, in fact, upon going unconscious, turn back into Ditto. And if it does that, some people may claim that it might be like eating grape taffy or something along those lines. I instead say that it is like eating an absolute purple ooze. I am not interested in drinking the ooze that turned the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles into the giant adults that they are, or giant teenagers that they are, because I will likely not survive that interaction within my body. It will be the last meal I will ever eat, and for anybody who has said at this point, oh, you can eat anything once, have fun. Electrode and Voltorb, specifically their Hisuian forms, are questionable, I will at least admit. I've kept them in the section that they are inedible, but they also do release seeds, and those seeds are thought to then become more Voltorb and Electrode in terms, again, of their Hisuian forms, but they also do like to explode still, whether that be electrically or full-on explosions like their modern-day counterparts like to, and as such, I'm just going to avoid that altogether. And when we look instead at Gigantamax Kingler, we find that it can actually release bubbles that are so acidic that they will flat out fully dissolve anybody that comes into contact with it. And have you seen that Santa Claus beard? That thing is probably full of this acidic mixture that you are likely not going to be getting rid of unless you want to end up on Guinness Book of World Records for deacidifying something that probably has a pH of 1 or even 0, which I don't think is possible. Oh no, a pH of 0 is actually possible. Never mind, I take it all back. I stand corrected. Please don't eat the Grimer or Muck line, not that you would ever find them appetizing, but they are living cesspool biohazardous monsters. In fact, when we look at their Alolan counterparts, they're not necessarily biohazardous monsters as much as they are chemical hazards that crystallize that chemical essence and will drop off and eventually decay after many years, except for its Alolan Muck form. I believe the Alolan Muck form crystals actually do last indefinitely, and you just have to figure out what to do with that. Nevertheless, if you eat them, you are effectively going immediately to the hospital or not even going to make it there, because just by making contact with muck, you will fall ill and quickly die. Now, I do want to note at this point, having seen a lot of the rock-type Pokemon go past now, there is Pyrrhotullensis, which is it's not a mollusk, it's a chitin, if I remember correctly. I'm looking at the information, and it is a tunicate. I apologize. It is a tunicate, which is a primitive chordate. It's basically a primitive version or something that existed within or before something had a proper spinal cord. So they're basically like the super ancestors of things that did have a spinal cord. But nevertheless, those are really cool looking things, and while they look like rocks, they are something that you can technically eat, to my knowledge, and I'd be tempted. I'm not gonna lie. It looks about as close as we can get to eating our volcano snail. But that does not make any of our other rock-type Pokemon edible for that matter, and as such, we are gonna skip over it. And we move on to Paris and Parasect. Now with Paris and Parasect, they have the Tochukaso mushroom on their body that will eventually take it over. But Tochukaso is thought to be another word or form of the caterpillar fungus, in which case the caterpillar fungus literally does that to caterpillars in general. So, very deadly, very terrifying, and you cannot pay me enough to eat either of these Pokemon, as I would rather avoid it trying to take my body over. Rafflesia in real life is considered inedible, and as such, Vileplume would be considered inedible, though I do not understand why you would even think to try to eat something that smells like rotted meat. The Zubat line completely subsists upon drinking blood, and there are the real-life blood-drinking bats that have adapted in ways so that way they can actually subsist entirely on blood. It is a unique feature to have these sort of creatures within our world, but at the same time, they are not going to hold the right nutrients or anything along those lines to support us and our diets, and as such, it's just, I'm not even going to consider it. The Jigglypuff line, I have always stated that they, in general, seem to have a sort of no organness to them, and by that I mean, considering the fact that they can indefinitely inflate their bodies or sing or whatever it is, and they are known to be able to just be full of air, I imagine, especially considering they are called the balloon Pokemon, that it'd be like eating a latex balloon. A latex balloon that has fur on it. And that makes me so much more uncomfortable. Moles, and this is actually the last couple of Pokemon that we have within our inedible section, being Diglett and the Drillbur lines. Those two, while again technically are edible, are Pokemon that by all means are considered inedible, because when we look at moles in real life, they are considered to have a very acrid flavor, like super putrid, nasty, almost rotted flavor to them. So we'll keep them in the inedible section, and that closes off the inedible Pokemon. There's over like 150 Pokemon in that section overall. Again, don't take too much into account which ones are placed where. Just know that they're all inedible. It just seems like a bad idea. Oh, one that I actually did not mention, because I don't have a script for this, too, that I didn't mention. I've been doing all this off of memory with the little bit of quotes that I've been quickly looking up just to make sure I have this proper. But when we look at our Bellsprout line, you don't want to eat these jar plants, but if you really want to, technically there are some that you can put your finger on and like scrape around the lip of the plant and lick it, and depending on which ones, apparently it is safe to do so. I would never do it myself, and it's all because it's just some sort of nectar to entice other insects to come near, some sugary nectar. The other one that I didn't mention, now that I think about it, is the jellyfish that we find here, Tentacool and Tentacruel. And while jellyfish may be eaten in real life, in some cuisines or meals for that matter, when we look at Tentacool, it does specifically state that its body is made up of 99% water, the other 1% literally just being its poison sac. So I'm not interested in eating the poison sac. I'm not interested in eating Tentacool or Tentacruel for that matter. And I don't think it's considering its tentacles as part of that percentile. But in the event that it is, I am not interested in eating it. Now, I blitzed through the inedible ones because it's probably the most boring section out of all of this, in my opinion, even with the fun special facts that I was able to throw in for that matter. But if you're still watching and you're enjoying this so far, I do want to say thank you so much for watching. If you are enjoying this so far, please ensure that you do subscribe, share this video around, and even comment anything, any special fun facts about animals that you can think of, or anything that you find surprising about Pokemon that you could eat, or which ones would be potentially even irresistible to you for that matter. Commenting, sharing the video, and even just watching, giving watch hours to the channel is the #1 way to help a small channel out such as mine. YouTube ad revenue is not reliable, and I could always use all the help that I can get. That way I can continue to make these videos as I do all the editing, research, filming, and of course, the thumbnails themselves. If you would like to go the extra mile, you can always become a member of the channel on YouTube or Patreon for as little as $3 a month. You get to see videos early, you get behind the scenes, you get the fully rendered images for my thumbnails, and while there is more to it, at the end of every single video, you get thanked specifically, as there is a full credits at the end of every single video that I shout out members' names for. Now, with that, once again, thank you so much for watching, and on with the video. In our next category for E, we find things that are terrible to eat, in my opinion. Could you technically eat them? Absolutely! Do I think it's a terrible idea to do so? Absolutely! But don't let me ruin your fun, or don't let me ruin what you do in your culture, by all means. These are just opinionated, in all means, by this point, so as such, any dogs or cats that are existent within this section are, well, in my opinion, terrible to eat. If I was stuck in a horrible situation and had no choice, and again, it was all ethical by all means to do so, which is something we are assuming, sure, you could eat it. Maybe I would be forced to eat an Incineroar. Now that I think about it, I regret saying that out loud. I apologize to everyone and my family. Again, more younger Pokemon we'll find here as well, such as Volibee and Munchlax, and maybe even Azurill for that matter, though that little tail that it has, which is just a ball of absolute nutrients, is incredibly tempting. But getting all past the dogs and cats, or anything adjacent to those, such as our hyena, we do finally begin to land with Guzzlord. Now, Guzzlord, you might actually be able to technically eat, but I don't think it would be a very good idea at all. Similar goes to a lot of our other Ultra Beasts, which we will talk about later on, but Guzzlord in particular just seems like a really awful, no good, very bad idea, considering that its skin is said to be incredibly rubbery, and if you take into the phrase or the idea of you are what you eat, Guzzlord eats literally everything and does not poop. So wherever all of that energy goes, it is used by its body, and I'm not sure I want to eat anything that works in that fashion at all. Either it will taste like absolute terrible, worst food that you can ever imagine, or it'll just taste like earth, rubbery earth. So again, you might technically be able to eat it, but I don't think it's a good idea. You might be looking at my list and you'll find Poltergeist and Sinistra here, and you might be saying, oh, Curly, do you not like matcha? No, matcha is delicious. I find it great. Sprinkle that on my drinks and I am a happy camper. But here's the thing about Sinistra and whatever, it's Poltergeist. The idea with them is that they were created when the person or an ancient matcha creator could not get it right. He could not get the right temperatures no matter how much he tried, and eventually died. And that may have brought this Pokemon into existence by all means. The problem from here then, though, is that they are noted to try and trick people into drinking them so that way they could take your life force, similar to their other Galarian counterparts. The problem, furthermore, is that they in fact taste terrible. It is flat out stated that they do not taste good at all. So maybe avoid the Pokemon that don't taste good and will take your life force, as that just seems like a horrible concoction. Miraidon is here only because I do suspect to some capacity that it might have some organic matter within its body that you can eat, but it is mostly electronic, technological, you name it, and it seems like there'd be a lot of effort for very little give or reward. Furthermore, when we look at Blood Moon Ursaluna, this Pokemon is a living zombie. And I say living zombie because it is very strange. It is found within the Timeless Woods, and it is specifically stated to have come from the lands of Hisui, having survived all these many years. And assuming the Timeless Woods just keeps the ancient world alive, or whatever is within it alive, then it might be a rotting Pokemon walking around if we have anything to judge from its physical appearance. We also find here Chien-Pao. Now, you might say, well, what about the other ruinous Pokemon? You could technically eat them. Well, Chien-Pao is made from snow and ice, and the actual Pokemon itself are the swords. But, I don't know, you could probably take a little snow cone and just slap that up, put some sauce on it, and it wouldn't hurt Chien-Pao in the slightest. You have infinite snow cones, so it might be a terrible idea to try and eat it, but if that works, then you have a, I don't know, a regular meal right there, or snack for that matter. With Finizen, Palafin, and its hero form, Dolphin is said to taste pretty disgusting by all means, including their rubbery texture or skin that you find on top. It is described to have a flavor very similar to beef liver, apparently, and it is very high in mercury, which is, you know, we talked about mercury and the buildup of it earlier, and considering dolphins do eat a ton of fish, it's kind of their primary diet, yeah, of course they'd be filled with mercury. Not that you should eat dolphins, I'm pretty sure they, amongst many other animals that we will talk about today, are protected species, as they should be. Strudel and Grafai do secrete a lot of poison from their bodies, and that poison, while smelling really sweet, actually has the ability to completely paralyze those that would come in contact with it, and often enough, their prey ends up being bug-type Pokemon. While real-life Eyes are not toxic, I feel like these Pokemon in particular do have a toxicity to them that you would otherwise not want to even try to eat. The Atena line is hair. I feel like they are primarily hair. I'm sure there's some level of meat, but they are also relatively humanoid. They kind of end up in that gray area for me of whether they're actually humanoid or not. And as such, I feel uncomfortable, but I left them in the terrible section for that reason. Applin, Flapple, and then their G-Max form all seem to be Pokemon that you'd probably not want to eat, especially as they are highly acidic. In fact, the whole reason that Applin is able to survive inside of the apple, or the berry that it resides in, is because the mixture of sweetness is holding back the incredible tartness that the Applin is injecting the apple with. Because acids in general are able to help preserve things. They are antimicrobial, antibacterial rather, and as such, they're able to properly help preserve the apple until it eventually evolves. In fact, when you give it the sour apple, or rather the tart apple, that is why it evolves into Flapple, and when Flapple comes out, the inside of the apple is completely worn away, and all you have is the skin, which is going to be a little bit more resistant to the acid, as it has all been worn away, and there's too much tartness, too much acidity to it. Meanwhile, with its G-Max form, or it and Appletun's G-Max form, we kind of have a too good to be true, so it ends up hurting you situation, as their nectar that they secrete or overflow with is said to be so sweet, the aroma of it even will actually knock you out. So let's not try and eat a G-Max Flapple or a G-Max Appletun, considering they are the same G-Max, and let's move on with our lives. You'll also find that I put a lot of foxes in the terrible section. Foxes in general are not said to taste good, and again, I find them very similar to be along the lines of the cat or the dog section, even though they're kind of within the canids category, but they're not dogs. You could always look it up for a better explanation, as that's not my focus today. Many lizards are eaten, and we've talked about a few lizards already, but when it comes to Sobble and its line, I feel like it might be more trouble than it's worth, but you could eat them anyway. Mainly because Sobble is said, when it does cry, is said that its tears have an aroma or a scent or something to them that makes your eyes sting, as though it had the power of 100 onions. Sure, throw a Sobble into, a stone soup, something that the whole village can enjoy if you really want to. But if you're eating a Sobble yourself, I feel like you're going to have an incredibly bad time, and you're not going to be able to see for the next week and a half. We have a long line of Ultra Beasts here. Kartana being paper. Yes, its arms and body are said to be sharper than any other well-honed sword or anything that we've really seen sword-wise on our planets, but it is still made up of paper. It is weak to fire, it is weak to water, as per its lore, and as such, by all technicality, you could eat it, but be prepared for the paper cuts that you're going to get. Formosa is a clean cockroach. It's a really weird one. A lot of Pokemon are incredibly strange in my eyes when we look at whether or not we can actually eat them, but it is said to be an incredibly clean Pokemon. It does hail in from the desert. It looks at things as if they were filthy, and they do have a pheromone that is said to kind of attract males, but also may attract other things that we are not currently aware of, or what its original purpose was meant to do within its home world. I imagine the whole purpose of it is literally just to find other Pheromosa or another Ultra Beast species that we are currently unaware of that does exist within its world. They also seem incredibly lanky. They don't have a lot of meat to them. They're incredibly powerful, so maybe they have some dense muscle that might be good to just, I don't know, eat, I suppose. But again, a terrible decision, which I will also follow up with its counterparts being the best Ultra Beast, in my personal opinion, Buzzwole. While it is full of muscle, it is still stabbing into people, and while it's not draining blood, it's draining energy, which is, by all means, a technically separate thing within the world of Pokemon. And when I look at Buzzwole, while it is very cool, I don't find it very appetizing. Maybe you could throw it into, like, you know, a slow cooker and really break it all down, but I feel like the muscle in its body is so dense that it's not worth even trying to do, and you will just end up with more problems than it's worth. Nihilego, I actually don't really know. Nihilego is another jellyfish type thing, and while it can secrete or fill you with neurotoxins as it attaches to you, there isn't anything saying that it specifically can do that itself. It can summon spikes, it can create toxins, but by all means, it might be one of the few jellyfish that you could, by all means, sit down and actually eat if you prepared it properly. Solgaleo and Lunala, a lion and a bat, both of them being giant forms of themselves and being properly formed stars or celestial bodies for that matter. Are they worth eating? Probably not. They seem like they'd, again, be a lot of work. And considering their steel or ghost typing, respectively, for Solgaleo and Lunala, amongst their other secondary typings, it would probably be way more difficult, again, than it's actually worth. I'm not sure how Type Null or Silvally / Type Full would actually taste. They are chimeras, and they seem to have some sort of fishiness to them while also having a form of llama to them. Thank you, Arceus, for that matter. But it might be like you're eating a number of different animals in one, and the way that that would then work is that it would just feel like you're eating nothing. Personally, I made the mistake of one point having the all-meat sandwich that they have at like a Jimmy John's or whatever, not sponsored, and you just stop tasting it. You literally just stop tasting it. When you have 4 or 5 different types of meat, you cannot differentiate between them all anymore, and I feel like it detracts from the experience altogether. As such, I feel like it's a terrible decision to even try to eat Type Null or Silvally. Sea cucumbers are said to have like a chewy, gelatinous, non-flavor taste altogether, so Pyukumuku may be incredibly low on the list of terms that you should eat, but is by all means edible. Wimpon's an isopod. You could eat it, but I don't see the appeal in eating nature's cleaner over here. And the same thing can be said about a number, or a similar thing rather, can be said about a number of our monkey or ape Pokemon. You very well could eat them. Maybe take a couple vines away from Darude for that matter, but none of them really seem all that appealing. You can get some comfy and turn them into some sort of flower tea, as they're probably hyper nutritious. We get into some of our small bears, beware for that matter. Though, what is interesting, and you might be surprised by, is that we do find a ghost that might be a terrible idea to try and eat, but is a possibility, as we have Phantump and Trevenant. More specifically, Phantump is actually said that according to legend, there is a medicine to cure any illness, which can be made by plucking off its leaves that it has on its head, brewing them, and boiling them down to a liquid. And while it isn't really a meal, it is something that I had to at least consider and note here. Once again, we find more snails, as the Gumi line are another set of, well, snails, or rather slugs, depending on which versions you look at, Hisuian or modern-day Colossian versions. And when I look at them, you might think, yeah, sure, it's fine. But also remember that Sliggoo specifically states that it can't really tell friend from foe, and just by hugging you, it will begin to dissolve your body. It will probably take an incredible amount of work to lower that acidity, but it wouldn't necessarily be impossible, making them edible, but not a great idea. Genesect is said to be an ancient Pokemon that was brought back thanks to Team Plasma's efforts, and then they slapped on some technological advancements onto its body, including that big old cannon in place of its elytra. The thing with it, though, is I'm not 100% sure whether it does or doesn't have actual bug meat inside of its body, so I at least placed it within the terrible section, assuming that it does, considering we've seen it actually build a nest and seem to actually take damage or feel pain. As such, I would like to assume that it is or does have some biomatter in its body. It's just this metallic frame has taken place of its typical or normal exoskeleton that we would normally find upon it in prehistoric eras. Ferroseed and Ferrothorn are technically the actual moss inside of their iron shell that they have. And, I mean, I guess you could eat moss, but there's really only certain types of moss that you can eat, and you really shouldn't, because very similar to mushrooms, if you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna end up in a very bad situation. And the only way that you can really eat the moss, again, outside of knowing exactly what it is by ensuring that you do cook it, break it down, and you go from there. And when we look at Ferroseed and Ferrothorn, they are comprised of whatever moss they're able to scrape up. In fact, if they scrape up the wrong moss, they become incredibly explosive creatures. Joltik and Galvantula, the two of them are technically hairy tarantulas that have electrical abilities, and while you can eat certain spiders or tarantulas, and while that was primarily a meal built out of necessity in some countries and is now eaten more as a snack or maybe some sort of delicacy, when I look at these two, they seem like they don't seem appealing in the slightest, because while a tarantula may have a hairy carapace or may have some hair on it, these are fully hairy, fuzzy creatures that I do find incredibly adorable, and it would be a bad time to try and remove all of that. Alamamala is based on the Mola Mola fish, and when we look at Mola Mola fish, according to my understanding, while yes, you can eat them, there are versions of them, especially the Great Mola Mola, that are not worth it in the slightest. Really, people may try and cook them down, but they're primarily a bony fish, and you would have to cook it for so long with a number of other ingredients or materials to then break it down into a jelly that you could then eat. By all means, everything is edible if you try hard enough and you make it something else entirely. And that, to me, defeats the purpose. So, it stays within the ranking of terrible. Frillish and Jellicents are more jellyfish. You could probably eat them, but it makes me incredibly uncomfortable to think about the idea that I would be eating jellyfish that do consume other people as a big source of their food. These things take down entire cruise ships. Though, I guess there's somebody out there that would take great pride in knowing that they took down a Jellicent that had a giant crown, because the bigger the crown, the more souls they have absorbed within their body. You might think Vanillite is a great Pokemon to eat because it looks like an ice cream cone, so it has to taste like vanilla. I mean, it's literally called Vanillite, so it's gotta be great, right? No, you're wrong. All the stuff that's on top of its body, while shaped like an ice cream cone, is just snow. Flat out snow that can melt off at any time, flavorless snow that covers its big, bald head, because it itself is just pure ice. It is an icicle that will slowly evolve over time thanks to the warmth of a sun on a nice cold winter day. and they just drink water. So again, you could eat them, but that would also be fairly cruel when you could just go get a snow cone. So to me, it's a terrible idea, as no matter how ethical you might think it is, you could just get regular snow and ice. You didn't have to take down this Pokemon to do it. Manaphy and Phione are based on sea angels, and of course nobody's tried to eat those because nobody's crazy enough to even dare to do so. They are actually kind of terrifying when they do eat something else. I believe I'm about to show Monterey Bay Aquarium's version as they kind of move around, because that's where I've gotten most of my footage from, or regarding the sea angels from. And when I look at Manaphy and Phione, they are primarily water-based. They're very much jellyfish-like, and overall, again, you probably could eat them, but it would just kind of defeat a greater purpose. Electivire gives me the same problems that I see within Galvantula and Joltik. Giant, especially humanoid-ish, hairy, furry, fuzzy bear creature that I personally feel, considering that it had to eat a generator or absorb so much electricity in order to evolve, that if I even take a bite of its meat, I'm gonna get a different type of spicy today. As such, I think we're gonna skip past it. It's edible, but might take a lot of work. Stunky and Skuntank being based off of skunks is like diffusing an actual time bomb for your meal. If you do it wrong, you are going to get an explosion of this mimetic gas that they release. Because yes, they not only release a stinky gas that's gonna make you just hold your nose, vomit, whatever it is, you name it, but their gas that they release to defend themselves also helps wipe your memory of the most recent event. Meaning, whereas other skunks may be able to use it, and you'll have, you know, predators that have been able to properly kill them as prey and learn, their predators, or these Stunky's predators, will theoretically never learn how to work around its poisonous scent, because they will not remember getting hit by it in the first place. The last thing I need is to be completely engulfed by this gas that it releases and forget my entire life. I mean, get rid of the trauma, but not my entire life, you know. You work hard to get where you are, you know. The Burmy line does get another bit of confusing factors to it, considering that it is based on the bagworm, and while they are, not to my knowledge, said to be toxic or poisonous by any means, they may ingest things that you probably shouldn't eat yourself, especially when we look at the trash cloak Burmy in particular, and especially once it evolves into Wormadam, in which case the substance that they have covered themselves with is now fused to their body and no longer sheds. The Mothim version really isn't different whatsoever, considering the fact that bagworms in real life will grow wings, or at least male ones will grow wings, making it so that way they're basically the same exact thing without any extra work whatsoever, other than I eat and I was born male. Our next string of Pokemon actually includes Bagon, the Cranidos line, and then the Shieldon line, because with them, they seem like they are going to be incredibly tough meat. There are other Pokemon that, yes, with a tough meat, even if there's a ton of muscle fibers, you can break it down with a slow cook, you name it, whatever. But when I look at the lot of them, they seem like they would not have incredible diets. Yes, Shieldon and Bastiodon were herbivores. Cranidos and Rampardos actually fed on Shieldon and Bastiodon. They evolved together over time until their eventual demise, and Bagon just jumps off of cliffs and continually somehow manages to not break its head or its neck in order for it to eventually evolve. There's possibility there, but as with many other Pokemon I've stated, it feels like there'd be a lot of work. Relicanth is also in the terrible section because you technically could eat it, and you could probably work around it if you made it into, again, a sort of jelly or changed it a ton. But when you look at actual real-life Coelacanth, apparently somebody was stupid enough to try and eat our ancient fish, which I vehemently oppose, but they may have been able to eat it without personally killing it, which technically would have made it a more ethical source. I don't know how else to go about it. Nevertheless, when you look at Coelacanth, apparently it said that they're so incredibly bitter and terrible that they will send you running to the toilet. Though, what real value or worth there is behind that, I'm not 100% sure, and take that with a grain of salt. Either way, I'm sure that the Relicanth is technically edible, but it's just not going to be a fun time. Whereas Chingling was left in the Inedible section because it is literally a floating bell, Chimecho has a little bit of something else going on here, though not much, I imagine. It'd probably be very similar to, again, eating some sort of boot or shoelace or something along those lines, a more organic version of it, as they seem to have a more organic body to them rather than a fully bell-constructed body of metal, despite it being a psychic-type Pokemon. All four of the cast forms, that felt incredibly redundant, theoretically could be eaten, though you might face more or less danger depending on which one you do decide to eat, considering that cast form itself and its body is made up to be exactly the same as an H2O molecule or water molecule in general, making it like eating a cloud, I would dare say. I would rank original cast form above the other three forms, and even though its sunny form would probably burn me immediately upon touch, I would dare risk it, because warm food tastes nice. The warm water does not taste good. Ugh, I might take that one back. I can't reorder it now, so if there's anything out of order than what I've said, oops. Lileep and Cradily, for that matter, also seem like more Pokemon that, considering they're based off of crinoids, would not be very fun to eat and would be very similar to Manaphy, Phione, or any other jellyfish, as they have very thin, translucent, relatively, bodies and are just relative filter feeders, even though these are larger Pokemon that do eat other fish that they lie in wait for and just chomp at. Trapinch is not going to have a lot of meat to it. I mean, its head is so massive, and I love the goofy little child so much, but it's just an antlion. It's just a bug by all means, and there's not going to be much meat. Vibrava would also be very similar to eating a fly, considering the idea that it does use its acid to spit out onto its food or its prey that it has already killed, and then will eat that body as it dissolves. Yes, that is what Vibrava does. Yes, that is scary. And yes, once again, very much like a fly. Wailmer and Wailord. By all means, real-life whales you could probably theoretically eat, and once again, you absolutely should not. I'm pretty sure that is illegal to do so. But with Wailmer and Wailord, their bodies are primarily air. They're probably some of the largest Pokemon while also being the least dense according to their information, especially as we know that Wailord can technically fly. Wailord is one of the largest Pokemon to have been discovered. Due to its immense size, it can make giant splashes by jumping out of the water and crashing back down. Shockwaves allow Wailord to knock out its opponents and herd its prey. Wailord is able to eat large quantities at one time, such as schools of Wishy-Washy, though it will flee from their school form. And it has no natural enemies other than Delmise, will move in pods, even traveling with Wailmer in order to search for food, and then their pods will work together to defend each other. They're also driven away by fishermen in the Pokemon world, but not said to actually be eaten in the slightest. I'm still going to stand by my statement that they are not going to be very worthwhile to eat. They're also baleen whales. Those are big old scary teeth that they have going on there, and that's where that comes from, which is also probably why they are often associated with bouncing or baleen, if that pun sits right with you. And overall, I just feel like they wouldn't have an actual immense amount of meat to them, as even Wailmer will fill itself with water to become more elastic and bounce better. Take that one, again, with a grain of salt, and you can always make your opinions or arguments against anything that I've said, as I do like to read the comments, and it makes this a lot more fun when I can at least read what other people think. The Aeron line secretes an iron shell to protect them. They are not the iron shell itself, and as they evolve, they do shed it, and that armor is then used by humanity in other stuff. As such, when we look at this Pokemon, it may be very akin to eating a turtle. It might be very hard to get to that underbelly, but at the same time, you know, you get both a meal and a bowl in one. Shedinja is just the shed husk of Ninjask, and I don't see that as inedible. but it's not gonna have any real protein. It might be like eating pig skin, like the chips or whatever the heck they're all called. I always forget what they're called. A good crunch, but otherwise no nutritional benefit, nothing great else to it. It's just eating. Now see, now I'm thinking about it. Now I'm thinking about Shoutout chips. You know what? Make that a brand. Slap it on a bag. Shoutout chips. It'll take you to another world. The chips that'll steal your soul. Oh, you know what? Brand it. Brand it. Bring it together, baby. When we look at Slackoth and its line, we actually have to compare it to real-life sloths, and some claim that sloths in general are said to be slimy, chewy, and gamey, and that just by eating one, you're good. You don't really need to eat anything else. I'm done. I'm moving on with my life. And that's about what sloths look like. They look slimy and gamey and chewy. They're kind of thin creatures. They're smart. They're very careful creatures, and I respect them. But again, you could eat them, just not a good idea. And while yes, it evolves into Vigoroth and eventually into the big gorilla or the big ape that is Slaking, I'm going to assume that once again, it is going to follow this idea of, yeah, it's not going to taste good or be worthwhile. Komala eats a bunch of leaves that only it can digest and is then turned into a chemical that induces it to sleep. So it has a bountiful source of food, but then it itself is forever asleep, born asleep, dies asleep, and we will use that same leaf or try and use Komala in some capacity to then create anesthetics for ourselves. The problem with this then is I imagine that Komala itself may have actually been full of this chemical as we find in many other Pokemon, and considering that it is an anesthetic, we may find similar effects to us. It's hard to say for sure because, again, there are a number of things that you could theoretically cook out or through heat and time will actually lose the potency of what's there, though we'll never truly know, and you should not, once again, eat real-life koala as those are protected species. Dino and its line are true omnivores. They will eat literally anything that they can, mainly because they had to live in caves where they had no choice. This has ultimately made them incredibly powerful and incredibly hardy by nature. And while there are many other omnivores that we will encounter later on that I will think would be incredibly tasty or worth the risk of eating, I cannot say the same for this dragon here. Especially when we look at, let's say the Tsuchinoko, who did eat poisonous things and was a creature that would subsist off of alcohol. We find that the Dino line and its inspiration was also a creature that, again, continued to literally eat anything that it could, was massive, and was only defeated after it drank from equal number of cups as it had heads, which were not even cups, just giant freaking bowls that then allowed it to become drunk, and then a hero came in and chopped all the heads off. Surskit and Masquerain, bug, but they also don't have a lot of meat to them. I'm going to move on pretty quickly from them, as the Lotad line also would be a Pokemon that you probably could eat. They have some inspiration within the Platypus, they have some inspiration within the Kappa, so either you're eating something that, one, you shouldn't eat, and Platypus in general, being a protected species, was hunted in the past for its fatty tail, in which case this Pokemon does not have, though as it does evolve and look more into the Kappa side of things, maybe it'll taste like sea cucumber, maybe it'll taste like something that eats people, because that's what the Kappa did, even though our Lombre and Ludicolo do not do that. In fact, you could theoretically say that their diet, since they fight with birds over seed or berries, may make them a tastier food, but it is not confirmed, especially since Ludicolo itself kind of seems to subsist off of good vibes. If you play good, energetic music around it, it actually gains energy, theoretically making it so that it never actually has to eat, and as such, I don't know what music tastes like. Not a sentence I thought I'd say. I put elephants into this section also. I don't know. Elephants, once again, just don't feel like I should be eating them, especially Donphan and its prehistoric form, for that matter. they feel like Pokemon that are going to taste and feel like a tire. Wooper is Paldean form, Quagsire, and Clodsire. Now, they all do have a film on their body which helps them stay moist outside of the water, and their Galarian forms, sorry, not Galarian forms, their Paldean forms, are also having this, or bear this film on them, but that film is known to be poisonous mucus. The reason for this is because they were unable to actually continue to stay in the ponds or lakes or whatever else that they like to stay in, and as such were forced to migrate outside of those sources of water. So the only way that they could survive without drying out is by having more of that mucousy membrane or film around their bodies, ultimately making them poisonous. And while yes, technically you probably could eat axolotl or giant salamander with your Wooper traditional and Quagsire, I do not see the appeal, nor I don't understand why you would do that. They don't look tasty. I will at least note that with Quagsire being based on a salamander, or a giant salamander for that matter, some people claim that it tastes like pork. After a lot of work, defeats the purpose for like the millionth time that I've said it, and we're gonna move on. Chinchou and Lantern are friendlier looking versions of the football fish, which is an angler fish. They also live incredibly deep under the water. What is it? I believe it's about 3 kilometers deep into the water, which is absolutely massive when it comes to pressure or light levels, which it makes sense why they are their own source of light, but they are hard to tell if they'd actually have some sustenance to them or not. Owls, all the owls are going here. I'm not even going to really discuss the owls. Yes, I'll eat plenty of other birds, but owls in general just do not feel appealing in the slightest. They feel lanky, and I like owls a little too much to really consider eating them. You can probably eat them. Many of them in real life, though, are considered protected species, so do not eat owls. Actually, I believe all of them are considered protective species, so do not eat owls. Both versions of Executor are here, whereas Execute we'll find later on. My reasoning for this is that at least with Execute, those are cocoa nuts. With Executor, you have the full tree. As such, those coconuts on the tree are not ripe, as one day they will fall and eventually form their own groups of Execute all over again. Also, I'm not a big fan of coconuts all that much, and I really do not want to eat a palm tree. If you do, please, just get help. I don't know what to say. If you're out there just scraping your teeth on palm trees, I've got beef with you specifically. More foxes are here. Mega Beedrill is here because let's be real, it is 90% poison inside of its body. I'm not touching that with a 20-foot pole. And then you get the Clefairy and Clefable duo. Actually, Clefairy should have been farther down below somewhere, I'm pretty sure. Nevertheless, they are Pokemon that subsist off of water. I don't even think they need to eat, and I've gone over this many times in my Ecology series. By the way, you should check that out, because I've gone from Kanto to Alola, covering every single route, every single Pokemon, every single potential diets that these Pokemon have as realistically as possible. And when I look at Clefairy and Clefable, they're again subsisting off of water. I don't think there's any real meat in those bodies of theirs. We don't know. They're from space. Though that's not to say other space creatures are off the plate later on, but so be it. I'm keeping them here because I just cannot imagine eating them. We're gonna skip past a lot of our tadpoles here. Sorry, I saw Tadbulb on my tier list here, and my mouth immediately wanted to correct it to Tadbulb, Timpole, or Poliwag, all of which are, yeah, big, fatty tadpoles. Poliwag in particular makes me uncomfortable because I imagine that little swirl that it has is going to be very similar to the poop line that's in a shrimp that you have to devein it from, and it just seems so incredibly unappealing. Vaporeon is also an incredibly terrible decision to eat because you might think it looks like a fish, you might think it looks like a mermaid, you might think it tastes like fish, but in fact its molecules are very much the same as water itself, which is why it's able to completely blend in with the water, disappear, become water, you name it, and it would be no different than drinking water. Although I'm 90% sure that if you did manage to drink a Vaporeon, it would bloodbend you like you would see within the Avatar series. Cryogonal, you also theoretically could eat, because I guess you can eat snow, but you're not actually eating Cryogonal. You're eating the body that it's taking control of, because unlike our Vanillite line, where if it melts, they disappear and they're gone, when you look at Cryogonal, they are the same Cryogonal when they melt. They melt, they come back, they're the same Cryogonal. So there's some sort of ghost possessing snowflakes here that, sure, make it a snowflake pizza or something along those lines. It's not a great idea, and if you're desperate for water, you're probably going to end up dying to a Cryogonal in the snowy mountains, so don't go after it, but theoretically speaking, you could eat a Cryogonal. Heatmore probably has some meat to it, but considering its engine-like body and the fact that it does release a lot of smoke from its tail in order to stay healthy and well, it seems like a bad idea. Followed up with our Gigantamax Eevee, which is more fluff than anything, and I don't want to dig through all of that fluff. In addition, when we look at Mandibuzz, vultures, or rather turkey vultures, are even described by the forefathers within America to have been eaten once, and have been an incredible regret in doing so. Despite looking, or at least to them, looking like turkeys, they taste absolutely horrible, but they are edible. Cottony and Whimsicott, I'm sure you could eat the leaves, and I'm sure that you could, I don't know, go after Whimsicott itself for its meats if it does have any, but otherwise seems rather inedible, because in real life, you should not be eating cotton, nor should you be eating cotton seeds. But we'll get back to that because we have a different story within the world of Pokemon itself. The Zora lines are foxes, and so is our Delphox line. We're skipping, we're going. Zorora was created from lightning hitting a volcano, so I'd be very curious to know what that tastes like. Or Choreo is a bird, but it is a honey creeper, and while it's larger than normal honey creepers, it's not very appealing. In fact, none of the Oricoreos feel very appealing at all, and I'd only have the Violet form here because it might be the only one that might taste decent, but I can't support it in the slightest. Male Salandit would absolutely be a horrible decision, though they are edible, due to the fact that male Salandit in particular have no good strength or nutrition to them, because any nutritious food or food that they gather is often given away to their evolution in order for them to feel better, to feel happier, you name it, because they're the perfect little simps that they are built to be. Turtonator is very akin to a turtle, by all means. That's why it has turt in there, but it's also a detonator, because with the food that it eats, it does create sulfur within its body that is then explosive. So I'd imagine with its explosive poops and its sulfur-rich body that we'd have a very eggy tasting turtle, but not in the good way. Your boy loves eggs, but Turtonator's got to be that rotted, rancid, eggy flavor that you're going to have to really work to get past. Dhelmise is way higher than you'd probably expect, only because Dhelmise is by all means technically the seaweed that's there. It is rotting seaweed in some cases, depending on how old the Dhelmise is, as it will continually get more seaweed that is adrift. But if you can get past the anchor and the wheel and the compass and any other part that is not organic, sure, you could eat Dhelmise's seaweed, which would effectively be eating Dhelmise itself, making it edible, but an incredibly dangerous meal. And at the very top of our terrible to eat section, we have Celesteela. And you might be thinking to yourself, wait, Celesteela is a rocket, it blasts off to space, what are you talking about? Well, you could, well, not eat bamboo, you and I, but we can eat bamboo shoots. And Celesteela, while it does not have a pre-evolution to our games, it does have a baby form, which I just realized what I said out loud, but I've said it anyway. You can eat bamboo shoots, you can eat baby Celesteela, making it an edible but terrible choice. As we move into what I classify as D, or if I have to eat them, I will, I have to admit, if I haven't mentioned it already, I've been going basically entirely off script, and this has been really nice and freeing, and I wish I could do this for more videos, but I kind of need specific quotes to help keep me organized most of the time, while also ensuring I don't necessarily forget anything. Luckily though, I'm a big foodie, and I also love nature, so this has by far been one of the most freeing and fun videos I've created. Probably top 10, I dare say. Without wasting any more time there, the first Pokemon that is up on this section is actually Rellor and its evolution, Rabsca. Now, in real life, dung beetles, you can take them, you can clean them, freeze them, you name it, as long as you go with due process and disinfect them, cook them, you name it. It takes time, but you can eat them. Personally, I have no interest in eating something that rolls poop around all the time. I know there's a lot of bugs that just eat decaying matter, or a lot of bugs that do eat poop, but I don't know what it is about a dung beetle that for me just does not click in my brain to be willing to eat it. Ogerpon is also pretty low on this list because it's an orange. Ogerpon is an ogre orange that doesn't actually have arms, but is instead just using a leafy cloak as an appendage of sorts. So it really is a Pokemon that is one with nature, and the other forms you probably actually wouldn't really be able to eat, as they harness and truly bring about the power of fire and earth. Maybe you can drink the spring water, and that would be different than actually eating Ogerpon, but I also really don't want to think about eating one of my favorite Pokemon. Munkidori is gonna be here along with a lot of our other monkey or ape Pokemon once again, because it doesn't seem appealing. Anything that is a little too close to humanity physicality-wise throws me off a little too much. I already feel uncomfortable sometimes eating octopus because of their intelligence, and we could say the same about a lot of other Pokemon for that matter, but something about Munkidori amongst the other apes or monkeys we find here puts them in just the okay category of maybe I don't have to eat them, maybe there's something else about them that I can eat. And that sounds really weird, but we'll explain that later. More spiders with Tarantula and Spidops. You just need to get past the whole idea of their webs, because their webs are so powerful that even a Scyther cannot cut through them. Otherwise, fry them up like any other insect or spider for that matter. And we move on to Sinistee and then Poltegeist. Now, with them, you and other people can drink them. In fact, within the world of Pokemon, there are people who are allowed to drink from them. Trusted trainers that are allowed to drink from them as long as you are trusted. Otherwise, it, just like its Polcha version, will steal your life away from you, and a lot of people like to take that risk. This Pokemon is also less of the tea and more of the mold, as if you kind of swirl it around, it'll actually lose strength, become dizzy, you name it. It's like skimming the mold off of the top of tea, and if you do end up with a Poltegeist, you can make more Sinistee, as that is what it is apt to do. Gossifleur is a flower. Again, you could probably make tea from it. Same thing we could say about the Flabebe line. You probably don't have to actually eat them, but instead they might be able to find a way to grow really nice flowers and help you with that. I'd feel a little uncomfortable eating them, but if you absolutely have to, you can. Scatterbug's line do cover themselves in a black powder of sorts, and eventually once it does reach its final form in Vivillon, it has scales that are known to be toxic. So you could probably work around those scales, considering that you could work around the black powder, as it is a paralyzing agent that is typically used against birds, but if they don't eat enough poisonous plants, they don't have that toxic powder to them. More cubs with Cubchoo, a little eel in Dynamo, and then our bees. With our bees, again, there are some people who actually do eat bees. I don't know what's wrong with you. Please don't. I just don't understand. If there's somebody who actually does eat bees in the, audience, with no actual offense, I actually need to ask, why? What's the reasoning behind it? I don't want to just look it up on the internet and read any accounts from anything along those lines of people. I want someone's personal reasoning as to why you would eat them, especially if they are bees that are actually really good pollinators. Because when you look at ribbon bee and you look at comb bee, these are Pokemon that are incredible pollinators and incredibly necessary within the world of Pokemon. So the idea of eating them baffles me, but it's possible. And you can always work around it, and you can eat pollen puffs from ribbon bee, and you could also eat the honey from a comb bee or Vespiquen for that matter. And if you even help a Vespiquen defend its hive, it may even give you honey. So you don't actually have to eat them. I'm willing to put them here and maybe even higher if you consider the idea of eating their pollen puffs or their honey. While Anorith and Armaldo have basis in the Enabolicaris and eventually becomes this big old mixing of dinosaurs as it does evolve into Armaldo. I always say that with a Spanish accent sometimes. It's just weird. I don't know why. It's just the inner Hispanic in me wants out all the time with every word that I say. Nevertheless, I have no real explanation as to why I would eat this bug dinosaur. It just looks relatively tasty, so if I absolutely had to, I would eat it, but it's not something that I would seek out, and it would probably just be like eating a lot of our other giant bugs. The Whismur line feels like I'd be chewing on some sort of organic pipe organ that you'd find within a church or a cathedral of sorts, so I don't know if they'd actually have any true sustenance to them, and it makes me uncomfortable again to think about eating them. So as such, if I had to, I would, but I'm never searching them out. Monkey in Montferno and in Chimchar, and then you get Blaziken. You might wonder why Blaziken specifically is so far low here. It's because it has so much hair. It is a rooster, and yes, technically you could pluck it all off, and maybe, I mean, technically those are feathers by all means. But again, we're looking into the idea of it being far too humanoid for my comfortable feeling, and while it is the kickin' chicken, it's not appealing. Girafarig and Farigiraf. Giraffe meat in general is said to be very dense, very chewy, but also incredibly full of flavor. So while it is edible, I do not want to eat one of my favorite Pokemon, nor do I want to eat my favorite animal. Well, actually, in real life, I'd actually be tempted to eat giraffe if I have to be 100% honest with you. Again, as long as everything is ethically sourced, I am okay with it. Ignore the chair squeak. I should buy a new chair at some point, but your boy doesn't have the funds to do so. Monkeys, 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 elephants, apes, things we've talked about before. You get into Natu and Xatu, and while it's a ping pong ball and a Pokemon that just sits around and does nothing, I imagine they have, well, because of their habits, not a lot of meat to them and don't overall seem very appealing, as they are also desert birds, and I imagine they'd be very similar to eating a vulture. Follow that up with one of my fears in the Pokemon world and in real life, as we not only have the Centiskorch line, but also the Venipede line. All of them being incredibly terrifying, as I do not get along with Centipedes in the slightest, let alone the Sizzlipede Centiskorch, which completely burn Pokemon, or people for that matter, in order to eat them, then consumes them bite by bite, as they then produce a gas within their body to produce their flames. I imagine they'd be very similar to Turtonator, where they'd have a very sulfuric or very coal or charcoal flavor to them. And Venipede, it just makes me uncomfortable. It's a giant centipede. Centipedes in general, if you cook them right, again, are another species that lives within the world that can be great protein. They are plentiful, and you can eat a lot of them, but I do not want, I don't want. That's it. I don't need to say it any further than that. Don't want. Sentret and Furret, being based on Tanuki and then Ferrets for that respective order, don't feel like they'd have a lot of meat to them. I feel like they're primarily fur. They're slinkies. They're furry slinkies for that matter, and I don't think it'd be very worthwhile. Maybe it'd be very similar to catching a squirrel or a rabbit for that, and you would have to catch multiple of them despite Furret's massive 6-foot size or length, but something about it just doesn't feel right to me. Bayleaf and Meganium are plant dinosaurs. They're probably going to taste like, I don't know, I mean, Chikorita is an Asian pear. so maybe the following two in their more seedy and flowery design may be better for some sort of tea, but otherwise they're good for aromatherapy and these smells that they give off more than anything. So you could eat them. I'm 100% sure that they're edible, but more Pokemon that just don't feel right. The next line of insects and arachnids that we do find ourselves ready to discuss are all edible or seemingly edible. Now we have Pinsir, who again, you can eat it. You just take off the big old horns that it has and you're good to go. Mega Pinsir, take off the horns, take off the spikes, maybe even fry up the wings. I don't know, man. Then you look at your Jupiter and Araquanid, more spiders, more frying them up. You get into even more spiders. You have Spinarak and Ariados, but the ones that are strange, that I feel like you could eat in the Pokemon world, but you absolutely should not eat in the real world because of their mothy origins, would actually be Larvesta, Volcarona, and Slitherwing. The strange thing about them is that they themselves do not have those scales that are inherently toxic or poisonous or anything like that to us, like many of our other moth or butterfly-based Pokemon may be. But they do, or at least in Volcarona's case specifically, have scales that burn up all the oxygen in a room. So you could likely find a way to eat them, but that might be a little sacrilegious trying to eat a sun god. Snakes are something I don't think I've actually discussed so far, as we have Silicobra and Sandaconda in addition to their G-Max form. Snakes, they're lean, they have, I believe they have low saturated fats, they're fine for soups apparently. I've never had one myself, but I'm willing to eat them. The only thing about Silicobra line is the fact that you do have to remove the, over 10-pound sand sack that they have attached to them, because otherwise you're just going to get a mouthful of sand. And I don't know about you, but I do not want to feel like my mouth is an entire beach today. Goldeen and Seaking, being based on Fancy Tail Fish initially, are Pokemon that you technically also could fry up their fins for, but otherwise to me do not seem appealing in the slightest. The only monkey or ape-like Pokemon that I would dare say I'd be interested or vaguely interested in eating but would prefer not to eat would be Mankey and Primeape, considering they are considered the pig-monkey Pokemon. So, are they pigs or are they monkeys? Do they only are they only considered pig monkeys because of their nose, or do they actually have some sort of swine, pig kind of flavor meat thing going on, ancestry related to that? I don't know. Water monkey Simipour, you could just drink the water from. I'd be more than happy to, because apparently it's supposed to be incredibly nutrient and mineral rich water, which is very healthy for you, and they'd be more than happy to help you out there. One that I feel incredibly bad for if I ever would have to eat them, especially since they, kind of lost their parents already, would be the Cubone line as a whole. They in particular feel like they'd be lizard or kangaroo adjacent, especially considering a lot of people look at them to be very similar to the Charmander line or the Kangaskhan line, but considering their past, it would make me incredibly uncomfortable, as you would just be perpetuating that cycle of sadness. Fortress and Pineco are in fact bugs underneath all of that shell that they have. We don't know what they look like underneath it all. They might also be bagworms, but they are still different from the traditional bagworm as a whole. They do eat other bugs. They don't just eat or feast upon the tree. And as such, you could eat wait, hold on. When prepared properly, some green pine cones are technically edible, though they may be difficult to digest. So, not the best idea, and it all depends on how you process it. Again, going back to the how far do you have to process something before you can eat it, but then is it still considered that creature still? Which reminds me, if you're vegetarian or vegan, I don't know how you would survive in the world of Pokemon, because you'd be questioning if a blade of grass was about to get up and evolve at any given point in time. I don't want to touch Mega Camera, because not only is it spikier and a lot warmer, but it also is ready to erupt at literally any given point. We follow that up with a bunch of bats, which I don't even feel like describing, other than the fact that Noivern and Noibat do feast upon a lot of fruit, so at least they are relatively tempting because of their diets. Druddigon is a dragon, but it feels like it would taste or feel like how stinging nettle feels, and that is unattractive. In addition, Aerodactyl and its Mega Evolution both feel like they'd be very similar to bats as a whole, as pterodactyls did not eventually become birds, but I believe were very adjacent to bats in their own right. One that I personally keep in this section, but is actually pretty open to eat, is Sunflora, because if you grab an immature sunflower before all the seeds harden on the face of it, you can actually like grill them up, season them, you name it, and some people have described it to being very similar to texture or taste as cauliflower. So maybe spice it up a little bit, maybe throw some onion powder, garlic powder on there, powder on there, let me not mumble my words, and, you know, put some butter and cheese, you know, Wisconsin style. Tropicos, Tortuga, and Caracosta. They make me feel like I am committing a great sin if I eat them amongst the many other turtles, though these are the ones that make me feel arguably some of the worst, considering that they are more related to sea turtles. There's no other real argument there. They're edible. Just get past their shell. Good luck with Tropicos, though. That's a pretty big shell that it can have. With Bruxish, apparently triggerfish make excellent table fare with light white meat that is delicious when cooked or eaten raw. While these fish are tasty, there are a few things to watch out for, because out of the 40 species of them, the clown triggerfish is the only one that is considered unsafe to eat. Now, looking at Bruxish, I don't know if I'd call it the clown triggerfish, but if it is, fantastic. Maybe we move it down a section. Otherwise, it is a very toothy Pokemon that does keep other dangerous Pokemon away through not only its ability to grind down shelled creatures, but also through its psychic abilities. To me, it just feels like it would be an incredibly bony fish that is not worth the effort. The Piplup line and Ice Cube. Apparently somebody out there decided that they wanted to try Penguin, which sure, somebody had to have tried it at some point, given the history of the world, but they're said to be kind of oily, you have to get past the rubbery texture that they have, and it's primarily dark meat that they have on their bodies. So if you don't like any of those things, then you're probably not going to have a good time trying to eat any of these Pokemon, and especially when you get into Empoleon, where it's going to have a not rubbery body, but a lot harder, more steely body that it is hardened due to its experiences. Scraggy and Scrafty are more lizards, so, you know, fine, grill them up. But the problem with them is that they wear all of their shed skin and it's incredibly elastic, so that might not leave you with a very good mouth feel. Mienfoo and Mienshao are polecats or weasels or however else you really want to go about it. Call them ferrets. Ferrets, my goodness. Ferrets, or whatever else you may consider them. And they kind of have an elastic pouch when they're Mienfoo. Otherwise, we have the very similar issue as we do with Sentret and Furret, which is that it's gonna be more lean, and you're probably gonna have to hunt more of them. I don't know what it is about Axew. I feel like Axew is just ever so slightly tempting only because of its evolutions, and it only eats berries currently. Its evolutions eventually do start becoming more omnivorous or even potentially carnivorous, but it would feel a little bit bad eating Axew, and I'd prefer not. I think this is our first legendary, as we have Thundurus, who is very tiger-like, who is a little humanoid, and tigers in general are a protected species. Once again, do not eat them in real life, as I've mentioned for many other animals that we have discussed so far, even if I've missed a couple. But can you look at that and say that it's an even remotely tasty looking creature? I can't. I don't have the capacity. I feel like if I bit it, I'd be licking an electrical socket. Salazzle also feels like something that would be dirty to eat in my eyes. Well, it might have a lot of nutrition thanks to the fact that all of its simps were giving it all that high quality food. It also has a ton of pheromones that it uses that I'm sure doesn't mess with the quality of the meat by taste, but it just might. And I'm not willing to take that risk personally. Glaceon, once again, we have more creatures that are primarily ice, though Glaceon itself doesn't say that its molecules are completely ice. So it may be very akin, while it is a fox, dog, cat, bunny Pokemon, as many of our EVs are, it may have a strange mix between all of that and snow or ice, and may result in a strange and uncomfortable icy treat. Ugh. As I said with Thundurus, we now have Landorus. Again, these are their Therian forms. I'm not even going to talk about their regular Genie forms because that would otherwise be in the Inedible section. And we've already talked about Tigers, but at least Landorus would be an earthy tiger taste to it. I'd feel guilty, but it's getting harder to pass up some legendaries as we're going to keep moving forward. We have Pyro the Lion, which fits to me very similarly to Tiger. I'd feel terrible. And finally, to end this section, you have Pumpkaboo and Gourgeist. The only reason they are in the If I Have To section is because technically Pumpkaboo and Gourgeist are not the actual pumpkin itself. They are their own creature that inhabit the pumpkin and eventually grow from it. The pumpkin would then be edible, just as any other pumpkin would be, though I'd be making this Pokemon homeless, and that would make me feel bad. This is when, if you haven't already, you really begin to judge me and my taste, because we are now in Category C, which is what I consider passable meals, and this is also where I let my instinct take over. So the order in which these are in, don't take them once again at 100%, instead of specifically organizing them as per, oh, this one's more edible than this, I let my stomach decide it. Once they're edible, my stomach is the king. And when I look at Skarmory or Alolan Sandslash, they have a very strong protective casing to them. Yes, Skarmory has that incredibly protective shell that it does have, and it is a little bit of a carrion bird, but it is a hunter as well by all means, and all you gotta do is get past that little exoskeleton that it has. Maybe it's a little extra crunchy underneath, you never know. Meanwhile, with Alolan Sandslash, underneath all of that ice, they do have some iron or metal spikes underneath all of that. So, if you can manage to get past all of this, then you have a shrew or some sort of porcupine or echidna, even for that matter, that you could nom on. Durant just needs a little bit of melting in order to get to the anti bits, so if you enjoy eating ants by any means, there you go, you get one big ant. Then you have Poipole and Naganadel alongside Beedrill, which are often associated with each other. Now, I don't know why you would do it, but you can eat wasps or bees once again, especially these big ol' hornets. But if you're allergic to them, you should not eat them. And you definitely want to make sure that you're being very careful with them and getting rid of the glands that they do have that produce their venom, especially with a Naganadel line. Honest is just a Mandrake Radish. Give it some ranch, call it a day. Grubbin and its evolution, actually all three of them, to me, feel like they'd be edible. They're not really getting much of a protective shell. I mean, sure, Charjabug is there, and it is described to be more of like a battery of sorts, so you might get that extra different type of spicy. Whereas Vikavolt might seem incredibly metallic and incredibly shiny, that's just its carapace, and we can easily get past that. Nimble and Low Kicks being based off of locusts, just like any other bug, as I've said time and time again, just throw them in a pan, season them up, and I'd be more than willing to eat them. Don't know why. Bulbasaur's entire line are just frogs with plants on back. Bulbasaur itself, you might be able to get away with eating, though I don't know if I'd 100% consider that, considering that bulb does eventually turn into a flower, meaning it's not like a garlic bulb where you can chop it up and throw it into your meals, but is rather just this incredibly dense seed, for a lack of better words. So you'd be more over eating Bulbasaur for its frog-like nature. Though as it does get older, it is going to become a tougher meat because of the fact that it is overall going to become more dense and stronger in order to hold up the massive flower that is growing on its back. Petilil and Lilligant are here. Lilligant not as much because of anything other than the fact that we know Petilil has the leaves on its head, which you can eat, and even though they are bitter, they are incredibly revitalizing. So maybe you don't have to eat the Pokemon, but you can at least eat the leaves that they have on their body, and it'll help you out, give you the nutrition, give you energy. Gloom is here despite everything because of the fact that the drool that it has is an incredibly sweet honey. It is actually really weird to consider the entire idea that this pre-rafflesia creature, or pre-flowering as it will also turn into blossom creature, has such an incredible stench, but also has an incredibly sweet honey or nectar that it releases from its body and is digestible. It's just not very appealing, making it a double-edged sword that I call passable. Hisui Lilligant is more appealing because it is the actual long onion itself, whereas our other Lilligant is just the flowering body. Palpitoad and Seismitoad will take some time to work around, because not only do you have to get past the kind of like big old warts that they have on their body, and yes, toads are edible, depending on which ones, as always, and the fact that Seismitoad specifically can release a toxin or poison that you should stay away from, as it'll release it when it is fighting. So find out where that gland is, or whatever it is, that poison sac, or hopefully it has one and it's not just existing with poison releasing from its body at all times, and you can eat a big old giant earth toad. Patrat, Watchog, Young Goose, and Gumshoes feel like a meatier version of what Furret would be. They are going to be eating bugs, they're going to be eating other small mammals, or more specifically, Young Goose and Gumshoes do that. And I have no other reasoning behind my decision for putting them here otherwise. Though, when you look forward into this, you'll actually find that I have some more icy friends here. Bergmite, Avalugg, and Hisuian Avalugg are actually Pokemon that, similar to Aeron, have an encasing around them to protect them, which in this case, instead of it being a metallic encasing, these are the equivalent of ice turtles, I do suppose. What's underneath? I don't know, but I wonder if it's tasty. Fomantis is here just because it looks tasty to me. I have no actual explanation behind that, but Cherubi and Cherim we can find here next, because Cherubi is literally just a cherry. In fact, the second vestigial head that it has is incredibly packed with nutrients, so not only could it taste good if you enjoy cherries, but you'll also have an incredibly nutritious snack available to you. When it evolves into the Sakura Blossom that is Cherim, you can have Sakura Blossom tea, which is supposed to be very aromatic, and I believe it has a slightly sweet taste to it. So that might be pleasurable. Oh my gosh, don't say that. I find Lurantis also being here makes the most sense to my brain, as it is supposed to resemble an orchid mantis or an orchid flower, as it is actually the flower itself now, and would just make another great tea rather than actually being a Pokemon you would eat. Turtwig is a small earth turtle, so take anything I say about turtles and make it back here, especially since I've been told that snapping turtles in particular make a really good soup. So turtle soup is something that Shredder said that he really enjoyed or was ready to make the Ninja Turtles into. Second Ninja Turtle reference, fantastic. And it's something that is supposed to just taste pretty good. If you can get past the spikes of a Sandslash's Alolan version, you can easily get past the original version, so I have nothing else to say there. Followed up by Beautyfly, which actually doesn't have toxic scales, which is an incredible surprise compared to many of our other insect Pokemon that are butterflies, or moths for that matter. And then you get into Alolan Sandshrew and regular Sandshrew. Pretty soon we're just gonna go through a lot of the rodent Pokemon, and to me, they're just, I just imagine Shrek. I'm not gonna lie to you. I imagine literally just taking a mouse and having it over a campfire. It is what it is. You eat what you gotta eat. It's passable. Though, looking at Flygon specifically, it has managed, despite living in a desert, to fatten itself just a little bit, and I feel like it has separated itself from that insectoid lineage just enough that it could have a very different, delectable flavor, and it is eating plenty considering it does pair up with Crocodile to ensure that they both get to eat their fill of food. It also just kind of looks like an avocado, and that might be due to the fact that I have a Pokemon cooking book, and they had a Flygon avocado toast in there, and it's not gonna lie, Flygon's looking like one big avocado to me these days. Spearow looks like it would just be something that tastes like chicken. I don't care that it's based off of sparrows. it just doesn't matter to me at this point. When I look at birds, I think eat, and you're gonna find that out really, really soon. Blossom is here because once more, I imagine its flowers or its leaves would be fantastic as a tea. Maybe it would give you the leaves and you could use them for wraps or using them when you're trying to steam your food, so that way it has a more natural casing to it and would be fairly nice and refreshing even. Orchid has a lot of feathers to it, but to me it is still a bird, although it is a lanky bird, followed up by something that is actually very interesting, because we now have the Corviknight line as a whole. Now, when we look at Rookity even, and blackbirds, apparently in the past, many small birds used to be hunted, not so much anymore. Obviously, whether that be because of protective reasons, or because it's just not sustainable, it's not healthy, or it's just disruptive to the environment as a whole, is that many small birds in the past were often used or cooked into pies. So Rookity could be made into a pie of sorts. And as it gets larger, maybe you are getting your own version of a turkey, because a turkey Pokemon doesn't exist. The closest we get is a pheasant that we will talk about soon enough. Though once it becomes Corviknight and Gmax Corviknight, parts of its bodies are encased, or parts of their bodies are encased in metal. Not their entire body, it turns out. But they are incredibly sturdy Pokemon, and I know that Tinkaton does use them to help create their hammers a lot of the time, but not every single time. Kind of makes you wonder what happens to the rest of the Pokemon if the Tinkaton is ripping off the metal carapace of Corviknight, and it does make me wonder what it looks like underneath. Hopefully nothing too gruesome. Now we have a long line of rodents. We have Tandemaus and Mousehole, turning food for the whole family into food. You get Detonate, which is just a dormouse, which are incredibly adorable when they do fall asleep in flowers. Togedemaru is a spiny rat, which is, again, rodents. You could risk it. It's probably not the best thing in the world, but you could risk it. The Paw-Me line are essentially just hamsters, and hamsters are... Where are they eaten at, actually? Okay, I can't find any sources that are reliable in saying that people eat hamsters, but people do eat guinea pigs, and I would dare say that they may have a similar feel to guinea pigs, just a little bit of an extra shock thanks to their electric typing. We have Remoraid, which is just a sniper fish, and I'm not sure that it would be fantastic for eating, especially as it's more of a cleaner fish when we look at its association with Mantine and Mantike for that matter, but we eat other bottom feeders anyway, so I'm not horribly burdened with the idea of whether I should or shouldn't eat it in regards to my own nutritional health. But we have the Hoppip line as a whole, which is just a dandelion. People have eaten dandelions, people have made dandelion tea, so that one's a little bit of a no-brainer. Diplin and Hydrapple. They live inside of a caramel apple. Now, they are worms, but they're dragons, so they're worms with a W-Y-R-M-S. I would take a bite out of it. I'm not gonna lie to you. We're getting to the point where I'm gonna become more unhinged, and I hope you're ready for that, because a lot of the past stuff has just been getting through it. Now we're getting into the slowly unhinged stuff, because it's covered in syrup. It's a dragon Pokemon that is covered in syrup. A sweet and delectable meaty treat. That sounds horrible coming out of my mouth, and I will not edit that one out. We all get to suffer together here. With Cyndaquil and it being partially based on an echidna and it being on fire, I imagine that would be a fairly tasty food, as echidna used to be eaten in Australia in the past, and I believe it might still be eaten here and there, though somebody can correct me and you take that information with a grain of salt. Now we get another paradox, though it's questionable on why I put it up here, but it may be because its headdress reminds me of bananas. As we have Gouging Fire right in front of us, which is very much akin to a saber-toothed tiger, and I understand I put all the other cats and dogs and everything like that way down below, but a saber-toothed tiger? You're telling me you wouldn't eat that given the opportunity? It's like asking me if I'd eat a mammoth. Should I? Probably not. But if it is 100% ethical, I will not hesitate. Gmax Blastoise. If you can get past the entire battalion or the entire turrets ship that it has placed upon its back, go for it. That's a lot of turtle meat. fry it up, put it on a grill, serve it in soup, call it a life. Considering mantine, apparently mantas were once captured by fisheries in California and Australia for their liver oil and skin, the skin being made into abrasives for that matter. Their flesh is apparently edible and is consumed in some countries, but is unattractive compared to other fish overall. I imagine they'd have not much meat to them, and it was primarily just a way to ensure that you are not wasting it. It becomes passable by that means, especially if you do enjoy eating the skin of fish, and that sounds horrible outside of context, as always, but I don't know, I've enjoyed lemon pepper salmon skin. It tastes really good. Don't take the skin off the salmon, fry it up, season it real well, call it a life. I've said that twice now within the last minute and a half. I apologize. Pelipper and wingle, pelicans and seagulls. I'm sure you can eat them in times of need, but again, they're primarily going to be dark meat, and there's a giant beak there that makes it very unattractive. To follow that, we have murcrow and haunchcrow, which once again were types of birds, being the corvids, that were turned into crow pies and stuff like that. Lots of dark meat, if I remember correctly, for them as well. And meat pie in general was, I don't know, I feel like meat pie throughout the years was always a catch-all. You make everything into pie. You know, if you don't want to eat it, you make it into pie. Is it going to be disgusting? Probably. But you know what? At least you're eating. And odds are you throw a couple vegetables in there, and your shepherd's pie makes things a little bit better. We are very, very fortunate in the modern day to have those sorts of things be not absolutely disgusting, especially considering pie is my favorite food. That should tell you who's probably way up high on this list later on, though. Wattrel, bombardier, then kilowattrel. Wattrel to me is just another seagull, except it's electric seagull. Boogie woogie woogie. Not that great of a deal, but still passable. Followed up by a stork. Sure, it has the giant chef's bib. Sure, it's kind of a jerk that likes to just drop rocks on people, which is cruel and funny. But neither of them seem very appealing, but they are still passable. Followed by kilowattrel, which does have a large breast, which sounds fantastic for a good replacement for, once again, a turkey or any other bird that you would want to eat breast meat from. A trio that makes me a little uncomfortable is the idea that Pick-a-Peck's line could be considered edible. I don't see anything saying that woodpeckers taste one way or another. Not, again, that you should eat them, as they are a protected species, but still, they're tempting. Shoutout is a small songbird. It's like asking if I'd eat a parakeet. Tempting. Kind of throw them, you know, like little popcorn, like little popcorn chicken, just pop them right in. Morpeko. Now, I have a little story about Morpeko. Morpeko itself gets angry. We know this. If it doesn't eat, it gets angry. As such, I consider that every single Morpeko should be called Snickers, because you aren't you when you're hungry. As such, I have slowly, even though it makes zero sense whatsoever, associated the potential taste of a Morpeko being equivalent to that of a Snickers bar. The little guy is just full of chocolate and caramel and peanut butter or whatever, or not peanut butter, peanuts, whatever the heck a Snickers bar is made of. It's just a walking candy bar, and I cannot see it as anything else anymore. All four of the Tapus are here. And you might be sitting here going, wait, Krillic, those are land spirits. They can't taste like anything. They're basically just ghosts. And I say, you're probably right. But look how vibrant they are. Look how colorful they are. And that should usually scream to you, do not eat, we are poisonous, we will kill you. But to me, and the way that they are designed, I think butterfly, rooster, fish, and bull. All four I'm willing to eat. Butterfly not as much, especially considering the heart scales of Tapu Lele. Yeah, Tapu Lele being the butterfly one, the pink butterfly, would absolutely send me from, oh, I feel revitalized and healthy, to I am now dying. Dratini and Dragonair, I figured that they'd be very similar to snakes, but with that special little spice of dragon added in. Chameleon is another lizard. Eevee, I gave my reasoning earlier. I feel a little bit bad for it, but at the same time, fox, dog, cat, it's not really any of those. It's a weird mixture of them, and then it turns into a bunny, so I don't know what it's going to taste like. Maybe it'll taste like dividing by zero, but either way, I'm willing to take the risk there. With Blitzel and Zebstrika, apparently zebra meat is said to be similar in taste to venison. The taste can be quite surprising, and the flavor of the meat is very intense. As such, very aromatic spices don't dominate it, and you can add a ton of other marinades or spices to it in general to really enhance the flavor overall. Which makes me kind of excited to eat a zebra, even though I don't know, can you eat zebra? Is that allowed? Turns out they're not endangered. I didn't think that they were, and while it's not widely consumed, it is not illegal to sell or consume zebra meat within the United States, and that goes for pretty much any animal that's not on the endangered species list overall. I'm not gonna lie to you. You know what? I know I said it. It's here in the Passable area. I kind of really want to eat it because I like deer meat. I'm gonna throw them up. I'm gonna at least throw Zebstrika up higher. I know I talked about it here. I'm gonna put it in a much higher section. With Drowsy and Hypno, apparently tapir meat is said to be rich in fat and hard to digest, but is often eaten smoked, in soups, stews, or with maize porridge. As such, considering this is a Pokemon I don't really care for personally, and how fat Drowsy is, I imagine it's going to be incredibly similar to a typical tapir, and I really want to eat it. Or at least I'm willing to eat it, making it a passable meal if properly produced, created, cooked, we'll say that. We can say the same thing about Munna and Musharna, except the fact that they might have explosive Dream Mist. I've talked about Turtle Blastoise, considering we have Mega Blastoise right here. Just get rid of the straws that are its cannons. And then we finally have G-Max Charizard. I am ever so slightly intimidated by it. I feel like all of that flame would really toughen it up and would not make for a very good meal. The entire Komodo line is also here, as they would also be incredibly tough, muscly Pokemon, as all they like to do is fight. More specifically, they like to fight to drive away the darkness, but they fight to go stronger, and they have those big metal plates all over their body, or rather those scales that they do shed off. I'm not sure what Drampa would taste like, but I imagine, again, it'd be like biting into a snake, but in the form of a cloud. It is based off of a sort of god or great mountain being by all means, so that might have been sacrilege, or at least a little sacrilegious. Good thing in Pokemon they aren't. For Staryu and Starmie, apparently starfish in general is something that is sold in like little, what are they called? I don't want to call them bodegas. They're little shops that line roads. Think of like when you go to a street festival or anything along those lines. Food stands, that's what they're called. Yeah, apparently they're sold at food stands and are supposed to be kind of good. And it is said apparently to even taste like sea urchin, which has a strong umami flavor, which is in a whole class of its own. Personally, though, I don't know if I could sit down and bite a starfish, even if you got rid of all the bumps that they have on their body, let alone a Staryu, considering that it is also from space and we don't know if it is actually that close in physicality to the starfish that we know. Mega Charizard Y, then Mega Charizard X. While their meat might be tough, dragon meat sound like good thing to brain, especially if I get a nice fatty tail to enjoy. And then we hit more legendary Pokemon. Zekrom seems like it would be nothing but muscle. That boy is built. Anything with a lot of muscle needs to be slow cooked, or you need to add some acidity to it to break it down. I know I said I wouldn't get gruesome, and I'm not intending to. I'm just saying that's how you cook your food. And with Zekrom, it doesn't even use the wings to fly. They're more akin to just plain wings, which it uses to balance itself out or guide itself. So that electrically charged engine of a Pokemon might be a little too much to work through. Just like when I look at Dialga and its primal form, they seem like they'd be a hard sell for me to eat. Big Dragon sound good to brain, but it ultimately may even be denser than Giraffe. It is a steel type Pokemon, even though it has those dragon bits to it, though it's a little too hard to pass up the possibility of eating time itself. Poliwhirl and Poliwrath are frogs, pretty self-explanatory, followed up by Bellibolt, which is another frog or toad as you might think, and to me, Bellibolt goes up a little bit higher, just due to the whole idea that I feel like if I did have to eat it, it would taste like an avocado. I mean, look at the shape of this thing. All of the unknown Pokemon, oh my goodness, this was something in and of itself. I actually started this whole process on stream, and we started making the jokes of the unknown potentially having different flavors for all of them. but which ones really stood out? Because I said the O one would be like a teething ring or maybe even a donut, whereas somebody else ended up saying that how the Q may be more like a pretzel, and I'm all in on that. If certain unknown would taste a certain way, I would love to imagine what that could be like. The Froakie line are as typical to a frog as you could get. Chespin, Chestnut, and Quilladin. Quilladin's the middle one. Are literally just chestnuts. They eat a ton of berries, and all you gotta do is salt them up and you're good to go. Minccino and Cinccino would make me feel incredibly guilty, but they're just more chinchillas, which you could theoretically eat. And finally, to top the order of passable Pokemon, we not only have the Salamence, Mega Salamence, and Roaring Moon, but we also have Koraidon. If they're anything like how we have been told salamanders are said to taste, and then we add in that ancient dragon flavor to them, Salamence seems like it'd be a good eat. Whereas Koraidon, I got nothing. It just seems really fancy. It seems really brightly covered. I would not survive in nature. Let's be honest. I think I could if I really tried, but I would be far too tempted to eat anything that I think is even remotely edible. And Koraidon's looking like a meal to me right now. Into those that are ranked B, occasional food. Now, you've heard my arguments for a lot of different types of animals, whether they're bugs, general insects, arachnids, lizards, you name it. So as such, I'm only gonna start highlighting things rather than fully explaining it, unless I can tell you about how you would be able to avoid dying from the Pokemon for that matter, or why I would find Giratina to be at the very bottom of the occasional food list. I don't know what it is about this snake slash antichrist creature, essentially, that I just kind of want to take a bite out of it. Regigigas follows Giratina, and while I think it has some level of meat in it, it's probably going to taste like earth, and I can't resist eating the giant golem in some capacity. Nidoking is very muscly, and we haven't talked about it yet, but its line are very akin to rabbits for that matter, though Nidoking specifically does have more potent poison, has a lot more muscle to it, making it a little bit of a harder meal to get through. Butterfree, Raichu, Yanma. Now, Yanma and Yanmega are more dragonflies. You can fry them up just as any other insect, followed up by Caterpie, which the only problem you're going to find with eating caterpillars, or specifically this caterpillar, is the fact that it does release a very strong odor from the horn on its head. If you could get past that, not a big deal. Swaddle, which is both meat and a salad, Weedle and Wurmple, which all you really need to do is cook out all of the venom that they have and get rid of their spiky little horns. Snom and its evolution, Frostmoth, may just feel like you're eating ice. And then you have Swadloon, Leathany, Snivy, all Pokemon that, once again, I've already argued for their potential, though Snivy is a weird mix between both snake and plant, so you might have a mixture of flavor there. Helioptile and Heliolisk probably just taste like a sun-dried tomato. We get more lizard with our Cyclizard, Rattata, Ekans, more birds. I'm sorry, but Altaria and Swablu in general, all you really need to do is get them wet, and they're not actually that much work. We've seen in the anime where they just lose all the fluffiness once they are wet enough, making it easier prep than it actually seems. Electabuzz seems like it'd have a lot of good fat to it, but Sneasel may only be here out of pure spite, considering that it eats the eggs of other Pokemon all the time, and Weavile will group up together to hunt down a lot of other Pokemon. And then Sneasel is also here. Despite its poison typing, it is not inherently poisonous throughout its entire body. Raticate seems like a poor decision, considering once again we may run into a potential disease or two, but it may not be the end of the world. And Fearow already, again, seems like a good replacement for a very lanky turkey, though I would watch out once more just for the idea that it is likely a carrion bird. The C-Dot line actually works just fine because you can cook out the toxins that you would find within acorns and then be able to consume them. It's not the best meal in the world, but it would make for a very nutritious meal considering C-Dot is packed full of nutrients. Spheal is a ball of blubber. Love Disc is a very thin fish, followed up by Finian and Luminian, which are also fairly thin fish, all in all, with not a lot of meat to them. And you might be surprised to see that I have Togepi and Togetic this high up. I love eggs. Let there be no doubt whatsoever that I love eggs. I love the Togepi line. They're one of my favorites. But I love eggs, and I will make some fried eggs out of them or some sunny side up. It does not matter to me. Devour. Chikorita is actually based on the Asian pear, and while I'm not the biggest fan of pears, I am willing to eat it if necessary. Chico is just a photosynthesizing lizard. Meanwhile, Sunkern should bring no surprise to you, considering that it is just a sunflower seed. Honey roast it and call it a day. Maractus is actually incredibly important, and I'm not just talking about eating its actual, like, cactus body, but more in the fact that it does release a ton of seeds within the desert, making it incredibly vital as a food source for other Pokemon within that desert. So even if you're not eating grilled cactus or anything along those lines, you can just eat the seeds, which actually brings me into Eldegoss, because while it is a cotton Pokemon that releases a lot of seeds, and you should not eat cotton seeds in real life because they are toxic, even though they're... I don't know anything else regarding the cotton seeds. They were trying to make a form of cotton seed that was actually edible, but I haven't seen any updates on that personally. And the reason for that is due to the fact that you can get pounds upon pounds of cotton seeds from cotton plants, not cotton trees, and per every cotton that is created or cotton plants that is then grown. So you have to do something with it, and if they can make an edible version of it, that'd be fantastic for, well, a very nutritious form of food. Meanwhile, in the world of Pokemon, Eldegoss does produce an edible cotton seed, making it a very good occasional food at the very least. Assuming they take after the mangosteen itself in not just appearance but also flavor, you can look at Steenie and Serena as potential fruits that you can devour. Shelmet and Axelgore are actual snails and or slugs that you can devour. And one that did surprise me is Binacle is way up here. Specifically because they are based on the gooseneck barnacle, which is found in the waters of Spain and Portugal, said to have a very distinct taste and texture, similar to lobster or even crab meat. So, if you're a big fan of those meats, you may be a big fan of eating some Binacle or Barbaricle. Arbok is more snake. Makuhita, wow, I kind of regret putting Makuhita this high up, but it's too late to go back now. It's a big old plump dumpling. What do you want from me? You can eat camel, so that's why you can have Numel. And then you have the sea lion that is Poplio. And while it is illegal to hunt sea lion in real life, they were once harvested for meat, oil, and blubber. Bone and whiskers were used for tools, sinews for cordage, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to keep going into all that because that makes me ever so slightly uncomfortable to think that much about Poplio or its line being used as food like that. But thank you, AlaskaFishandGame.gov, for providing that information to us, as they are not just used for food, but also used in a variety of different ways. Hippopotas and Hippowdon, while living in the desert, seem to live a very, very full life. They do hunt other creatures, unlike real life hippos, which primarily are grazers or eating stuff at the bottom of the waterbeds. Yes, they will attack other animals, and yes, when in times of need, you do have animals that will literally eat anything, but something about them within the Pokemon world makes them seem a little bit tasty to my brain. We can follow that up with Otter. In the form of Oshawott line and the Buizel duo, these Pokemon may be, if we look at real life otters, comparable to a gamey taste. Some people imagine that they taste like fish, and then many others have a number of different descriptions for them. Of course, everything going back to pork or chicken. But to me, when I look at least at the Duat line, especially when I stare at Samurott, I really imagine a shrimpy taste to them to some capacity. An interesting we'll find here is Arrokuda and Barraskewda because of the fact that they're based off of Barracudas. Now, Barracudas in real life do have a buildup of an algae-based toxin that continues to build up within their bodies. It is not something that you can cook out and will stay within them. So typically you'd want to make sure you're eating smaller Barracuda if you so decide to eat them. but are otherwise considered a very delicious animal in real life, or fish in real life. Also, as a very fun fact regarding barracudas, they are not aggressive towards us. In fact, a lot of their aggression towards other creatures outside of the ones that they actively do hunt is defensive, because they have very poor eyesight. Finding Nemo, you taught me wrong, and I'm sorry to all the barracudas out there. Grottle is here not necessarily due to the fact of it being a turtle, but more with the fact that they do produce nuts or berries upon their shrubs, and I would be more than happy to eat that. Another Pokemon that I'm actually very disgusted about the idea that I know I would at least eat on the regular is the Pokemon that is known as Toadschool and Toadscruel. And this is because they are based on the wood ear mushroom, which is an edible mushroom that you can harvest. The Choodle line for being turtles, and apparently, again, snapping turtle soup apparently is very delicious. You have Camerupt again, Halucha, Ducklet, and Swanana. I mean, do I really need to explain eating duck? I don't know if people really eat swans, though, now that I think about it. Okay, so it's hard to say whether they are art. I'm getting very conflicting pieces of information, but some people are saying that older swans are said to taste like fishy mutton. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that in particular, but either way, I've placed them this high on the list, and I'm not taking them back down. Kangaskhan is just a kangaroo, and that is something that is commonly eaten, or can be commonly eaten. Just, you know, let the child live. You know, you gotta have a population out there if you're gonna do that. Swallow, which is just another bird that tastes like chicken. You have Cramorant, which is a cormorant, which is supposed to taste somewhere between chicken and fish for that matter. And then I specifically singled out Latios, then the mega forms of Latios and Latias, and then Latias itself. They are based on a fake bird, the Martlet, which is just a mythical bird that doesn't have legs and never lands and is eternally flying. It's also a symbol in some areas. I don't know, they just seem like they taste good. They make the life do, after all. I want you to imagine eating a chicken or goose in your dreams, or even a swan for that matter, and then you kind of bite into some weird magical thing and just feel some extraterrestrial level of flavor mix throughout your entire mouth. And that sounds like a wild description that probably makes absolutely zero sense. And that's exactly what I feel like our Cresselia would taste like. Torchic is a chicken nugget. Gibble line are just sand sharks. And I'm not gonna lie, I had the opportunity to eat shark once. I should have taken it, and I didn't. It's a small regret. And then you have Fracture and Haxorus, which we've kind of mentioned before. Execute, if you like coconuts, you're gonna like Execute. And you might be wondering, wait, it's a seed, isn't it? Isn't it just supposed to be an egg? I don't know what it is. They are a lovely bunch of coconuts. So again, if you enjoy coconuts, fantastic. I can only drink a sort of coconut juice or coconut soda. I just do not care for coconut shavings. They sound and taste terrible to me. I couldn't find anything definitive about Mongoose for our Zangoose Pokemon. Some people or some suggestions might say that it was gamey. Some people say that it was just something similar to that of a rabbit or other rodents out there. But I couldn't, again, find anything definitive. All I know is that I'd be willing to eat it and Seviper, and that's why they're placed right next to each other. Swinub is just another pig, Delibird's another bird, but I feel like if you ate a Spinda with how drunk it acts all the time, you yourself may get some sort of drunken effect added to you. Which, fun little fact, once again, because I feel like I've been lacking in those today, is that a lot of animals will end up getting drunk off of, let's say, cranberries or honeysuckle, in that respective order regarding cows and robins. That's just the sugar content that is packed within them while also being nutritious or a favorite food is something that results in a lot of sugars processed within their body, effectively making them drunk, because by all means, alcohol is processed into sugars within our body, and that's what makes us feel the way that we do when we get drunk. Go-goats, I would absolutely be trying to get some milk for cheese out of, if not maybe eating goat meat. And then you have haunts. I mean, every single freaking horse is right here. Spectrier, Glastrier. I feel a little uncomfortable saying that. Keldeo is here, but if you're telling me you wouldn't eat a unicorn, I don't know you're missing an opportunity. I would eat a unicorn. Again, Everything is ethical here. That is what we're assuming. Then you have Ponyta in both of its versions, and then Rapidash as both of its versions, alongside Mudbray and Mudsdale, which is very interesting considering the idea that Mudbray and Mudsdale were almost hunted to extinction incomplete. But at least within the Alola region, they weren't. And this is likely a reference to the fact that horses in time of need were often eaten and are said to actually be really good, as sometimes even in the nowadays, they are eaten fairly regularly, again, humanely, and are said to be akin to a better form of beef. Pokemon you shouldn't be surprised to find here is the fact that Nacli's line is here. In fact, its salt is often used in meals within the Paldean region. So you're just getting salt. You don't have to eat this Pokemon. Meanwhile, Capsakid and its evolution, Scovillain, are just so close to being a Pokemon that I am more than willing to eat. I mean, Scoville is just the rating at which something has a spice level of, and then Capsakid is a play on the word capsaicin, which is the chemical that is the spicy chemical. And I don't know about you, but I love me my spicy food. Smoliv has an oil that it does secrete that is known to be so astringent that it'll make you flinch. Though when it does evolve into Dolive, that oil is often freely given to others and is used as, well, olive oil would be. And finally, when it becomes Arboliva, it is a nutrient-rich, very delicious oil that is willing to share to those that it seems comfortable with, making them all very easily Pokemon that you would put high on the occasional food list. I mean, you're using olive oil rather than, like, eating it, unless you're a sociopath. Celebi is an onion fairy. Do I need to say more? Do I feel terrible doing it? Yes. But it's still an onion. I'm sure that if it really wanted to, it could grow a bunch of shallots or onions for me, and I would never have to eat the little time guardian that it is. Golduck is another duck, and then you have the Dragon Ice type that is the Frigibax line. I have absolutely zero reasoning behind it, but every part of me, once again, is willing to eat the kaiju dinosaur thing that is here. Gmax, Lapras, and Lapras would be like eating a plesiosaur, especially as they just eat a ton of fish, so they probably have a very good fishy taste to them. I will not hesitate to eat Gmax, Lapras, music notes, and all. Though to top the occasional food list, we do have Magikarp, and you might claim that, hey, Magikarp is nothing but bones. I refuse to believe that because even in Pidgeotto's Pokédex, it is stated to actively hunt after Magikarp amongst other fish. And while carp in real life in some areas of the world, primarily the western area in the United States, is seen as a fish that you just do not eat and may be disgusting, it is actually a fish that is used in a lot of dishes, and some people say tastes really good. It's a bottom feeder. If you like catfish, you're probably gonna like carp to some capacity, I imagine. I have not gone through all 1025 Pokemon in quite some time, but here we are in the anytime meal section that I am labeling with a big fat A. Snover itself does have edible berries that a lot of other Pokemon will use and eat for their benefit. And I'm more than willing to try whatever berries fall from its body, though the scary thing is I do or do not know if you would be able to survive it, because you don't really need to actually hunt them down. You just need to be friends with them and then get a berry from them. And a Bombasnow might get in the way of that. Pachirisu is just another squirrel or rodent, so I don't really care. That's nice and easy. Eats both. Feebas is not said to be eaten by any capacity, but it is technically a bass, which is a white fish. That's a nice, another easy meal. And then we get a bunch of others, right? So I'm not going to go through, again, every single one. I will throw it on screen at the end of this section, or you will be able to view it in the description below. I don't want to keep being repetitive. The one that you might find a little surprising is that I have Gliscor and Gligar here, when in fact they are flying scorpions. The real-life version of them is nothing like them. But considering the Pokemon version is literally a flying scorpion, and I've always wanted to try to eat scorpion, venom and all, you should at least be happy that I did not put them in the Irresistible section. Now, what does scorpion taste like is a great question. A scorpion is said to have a slight fishy taste, and they can be consumed fried, roasted, grilled, or live. Never doing that last one. Live scorpions are usually eaten with their stingers cut off and dunked in some sort of wine. That sounds absolutely horrid. Please do not eat anything live. That sounds like it is, I feel uncomfortable even thinking about that. Some people have also compared scorpion to being like beef jerky, and how their venom, when cooked properly, may taste more like a salt water, and others might say that they taste a little bit bittersweet overall. Something that I'm personally incredibly curious about, so if I ever get the opportunity to eat a scorpion, you bet I'm going to, and you bet I'll tell you everything about it. Just like I kind of want to eat chocolate-covered crickets and then salted crickets, because they're supposed to be great for protein, but I've never had a good opportunity to eat them. You get more rodents, you get more rabbits, you get more bunnies, whatever you want to say. I threw in Calyrex in there because it's just a white hair, and incredibly intelligent white hair that would make you question your own personal morals, considering just how intelligent it really is, but nevertheless, it is a rabbit. In fact, I'm just going to jump way further ahead, and we find Flareon and Jolteon here, which, again, start leaning more into the potential of rabbits. One of them being fire, one of them being electric, bringing you two different types of spice in my brain, or at least that's how I interpret it. And then you have Shaman, the flower grass hedgehog that it is. Hedgehog in general is said to be something that is more of an acquired taste, maybe something that you'd rather throw into a soup, and is more something that you're going to season really nicely. But I have a really good feeling that Shaman is going to be fantastic for helping growing berries or anything along those lines, meaning that I don't necessarily think I'm going to eat Shaman directly, but rather it may help revitalize the area around. Just like how we have the Sima Sage or the Pan Sage itself, which is a Pokemon that leaves on the sprout of its head are said to be edible and can alleviate exhaustion. Though when it does evolve into Simisage, we have a little bit of a different story as it does become more bitter. It's just a free healing and revitalizing potion in the form of, I don't know, a leaf. Spoink is just a pig. Then you have Quaxley, which is just a duck, which I don't really care for duck that much. I mean, I know I have it in anytime meal section, but duck really is just a little bit oily. I don't know if I've only bought it once and it was on sale. So I don't know, maybe I just didn't prepare it correctly, and a lot of people say duck is amazing. We have a slew of birds. Apparently you can eat piranhas, and they're supposed to have a pretty decent taste all in all. Psyduck is another duck, but very fatty. And then I have Ammonite and Amistar. To me, I do like eating octopus. I do like eating squid. The thing about it, though, is you have to prepare it right, season it a bunch, or you have to have really good dip and sauces available to you. Otherwise, you're just eating something that doesn't have a lot of flavor, and it's just air with, like, fried goodness attached to it. And at that point, you're paying extra for a seafood that doesn't even taste like anything in my eyes. It all is dependent on how it's prepared, and when it does become that evolution of Omastar, that just sounds like more food in the same shape. Crustle and Dwebble are hermit crabs. People do eat hermit crabs. And then you have Shuckle. Shuckle's a weird one, considering you probably don't want to eat a slime mold, but it does produce berry juice, which people in the world of Pokemon do consume, or drink for that matter in general. More squids with Malamar, and then you have Pikachu as another rodent. You have more of the regular Kickin' Chicken line, which I don't know why I put Mega Blaziken up there, but maybe because I thought that it would cook itself, which sounds really fantastic and an easy meal. And when I say the majority of our birds here, I literally mean the majority of the rest of our birds are right here. I want their wings. I want to roast them. I want to give them a try. Even our Tornadus here, who is just one big featherless bird genie thing. Give it to me. Ostrich, as we look at Espathra, for example, is said to have a flavor more like beef than poultry, and many appreciate its subtle notes of butter and toasted walnuts, according to American Ostrich Farms. So that puts it fairly higher on the list. The closest we can get to a turkey Pokemon being our pheasants, as Unpheasant and even Pheasantipity we can find here. And there's so many of our large-breasted, large-winged birds. Though please do not eat eagles. That is hyper illegal, as they are an endangered species. A Pokemon that is known to be eaten in the world of Pokemon is actually Tangela's vines. They're said to have a very fresh and generally refreshing light flavor to them, and ripping them off does not hurt Tangela at all. We can assume the same for Tangrowth, as it'll just rip its arms off and be perfectly fine afterwards. If you like oysters, you have Shelder, Grumpig's a pig, have some mutton in the form of a sheep, as we have Wooloo and its evolution. I'm from Florida, so I am not afraid to eat the Totodile or the Fuecoco line for that matter. And then another one that you might be surprised to find here is Stunfisk. Stunfisk, being based off of a mudfish or flatfish in general, might have a very muddy or earthy flavor, as one would expect, but you can clean it and prepare it in a fashion in which case it becomes incredibly great tasting according to others. Which is something that I would have never, again, personally even expected to see, that Stunfisk would be on the anytime meal section. Followed up by more alligators, or rather crocodiles, in the Crocodile line. We have more sheep with Mareep, and then you have Bounsweet. Bounsweet itself being a Pokemon within the world that its sweat is too sweet to drink directly, and instead they will take that sweat and then turn it into a highly watered down juice. Mangosteen itself is said to have a sweet and tangy flavor with hints of peach, cherry, and strawberry. The flesh within the fruit is luscious and creamy in texture. Oh no. Oh no. I want to eat the Bounsweet line. But at least I want to drink the juice, which sounds terrible and it feels disgusting to say, but the people within the world of Pokemon do it, so I can't feel guilty doing the same. Palkia. Palkia and its origin form. I don't know what it is, but the second it took its Haunts form, I wanted to eat the Haunts. Let me eat the god of space itself in the form of a horse and live through all of the galaxies at once. I feel bad for stating this one because the Mudkip line, being based on Mudskippers or Axolotls in general, may actually end up tasting really good if they are more akin to the Mudskipper line, as they can be incredibly tasty in terms of a white meat that typical fish may have, and have a nice crispiness to them. We're skipping an entire line of Pokemon that are here to jump immediately to Spritzy and Aromatisse. They are birds, and being based off of plague doctors, those individuals would often fill their beaks with a number of different spices or aromatics in general to provide themselves protection from negative ailments that would then occur while being around sick or dying people. So this bird has self-spiced itself, making it even easier to eat. We now have the Milcery and Swirlix lines. Milcery itself, being just cream or milk, I guess, is a Pokemon that will even blind its enemies while running away with its own delicious cream. That is something that is directly stated, and is often rumored that patisseries visited by Milcery are guaranteed success and good fortune. When it does evolve into alchemy via the one of many different types of creams or flavored candies that you do add to it, it becomes a whole other Pokemon that is able to share some of those flavors with you. Alchemy's cream is said to bring happiness to anyone who eats them. If attacked, it'll throw a sweet scented cream to distract or blind the opponent in order to escape, and the cream's effect is powerful enough to make an opponent soothed and lose the will to battle if eaten. They come in a number of different flavors, being vanilla, ruby, matcha, mint, lemon, salted, ruby, caramel, and rainbow flavors. So take your pick. I might go with lemon because, God, I love lemon flavored things. Meanwhile, with Swirlix, it is known to have a feeling as though it is sticky like cotton candy. It is said to smell like cotton candy, and it does eat the amount of sugar equal to its own weight. And if it doesn't, it grows incredibly grumpy. As such, if it looks like cotton candy, it feels like cotton candy, it smells like cotton candy, and it is full of sugar, then it is cotton candy in my eyes. When it does evolve into Slurpuff, it is literally called the Meringue Pokemon, or Meringue Pokemon, however the heck you say that. It's essentially a marshmallow at this point, which it makes sense that sugar with enough additives, not even that many more ingredients. I'm pretty sure marshmallows are just fat and sugar whipped up and made super airy and soft, and that's essentially what meringue is. Dugong is here for the fat that it does have. Shelter's also here because I don't mind eating oysters. And then you have all of the adult bear Pokemon. Every single one of them is going into the pan. Why? Because if you slow cook bear, it will taste delicious is what I've been told. And I am more than willing to eat any bear for that matter. The bigger the bear, the slower the cook, and I will be happy. Magmar's just a fire duck. Krabby is actually noted by Professor Oak to be a Pokemon that he would eat because as he looks at Ash's Krabby, he says that his Krabby is too small, but that his own grandson's Gary Oak's Krabby may be one that he is interested in eating. Clough's shells and claws often fall off or are shed and are used to make foods such as Clough al ajillo and Clough sticks. Basically being crab sticks and a crab, what is it, rice, I believe? Oh no, it is a soup. It is, I can literally show its entire claw in a soup. I really need to brush up on my Spanish. I might be Hispanic, but I can barely speak Spanish. Greedent's just a bigger, fatter squirrel that eats tons of nuts and berries, and that sounds delicious to me. And then someone else brought up the whole idea that Golisopod may actually be incredibly delicious and more akin to lobster. And ever since reading that comment, I have now stated that I want to eat Golisopod. You have sharks and Sharpedo again, which was overhunted even in the Pokemon world. Barboach and Whiscash are just catfish, including Dodonzo, which is literally known as the giant catfish Pokemon. Fry it up, give it back to me, I will be happy. In fact, I'm going to share with you a story from my childhood. I remember living in Florida, and we would go fishing. We'd catch catfish, we'd catch whatever, as long as we were allowed to keep it, we'd come home, and my mom, bless her heart, I love her with all my heart, she would actually fry up the catfish while I was watching Saturday morning cartoons. You know what I remember? I specifically remember watching Beautiful Joe during those mornings. And I'm tearing up a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. But man, I do miss those days sometimes. Gosh, it was beautiful. I love the catfish. I love my mom. I don't even live in the same state as her right now. But goodness, it's a memory I'll never forget. We follow all of that up with a bunch of deer, or antelope for that matter, as we have Cobalion and the rest of the Swords of Justice, Stantler, and its evolution, all being in the same place. Though I will specifically state, when we look at Sawsbuck, I am specifically only keeping it to the autumn form of Sawsbuck, considering that's when hunting season typically happens anyway. And I'm a big fan of venison, I'm not gonna lie. I would love to eat more venison in my life, but I also don't know where to get it reliably. Though once I do figure it out, you bet, as long as it's not expensive, I'm gonna be eating more venison. Complete 100% Zygarde is here. I imagine all the Zygarde forms would taste the same, which is a big question mark, but man, I'd be 100% willing to try and eat the creature that keeps the balance between life and death within our world, which is horrible to say once again, but oh well. Azumarill is way up here, not just because it's a rabbit. I don't really care about rabbit. I've never really had it. It's a lean and blah, 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 blah. But you know what Azumarill has? Thick fat. That is literally one of its abilities. I would be smitten to eat Azumarill, given the opportunity. Now we're getting into some of your more typical stuff, like your Tauros, your Miltank, and your Buffalint. I did throw in Walrein and Titan in there. Again, I'm sitting here thinking of Pokemon that have plenty of meat, that have plenty of fat to them, and would be just dribbling with that fat, which would be absolutely delicious. Though, buffalo I have had once. I've had a buffalo burger, and it was far better than any beef burger I've ever had in my entire life. It wasn't a ground beef or anything like that. It had actual grain to it that you could tell was just matching a certain vertical pattern. I don't know how else to describe it, especially since it's been so long. It didn't taste super gamey or anything along those lines. It felt and tasted so much better, and I wish I had a better way to describe it. Apparently, according to Jackson Hole Buffalo Meat, compared to beef, buffalo has a lighter flavor, tastes slightly sweet, and is deliciously tender. It is naturally lower in fat, calories, and cholesterol than beef, and unlike conventionally raised beef, their bison are grass-fed, which is a whole other ball game. I'm not going to talk about them and their stuff. I'm not sponsored by them. I just flashbang myself by looking at part of the old script that I had for this. But no, Buffalint does cap out the anytime meal section, as again, buffalo is delicious and just feels so much better. It doesn't feel so greasy or fatty, but it has just enough to taste the way that it should. We have reached the section of Pokemon that I would find irresistible to eat for a meal. To start out, we have the Slowpoke evolutions, and I know, there's a very good chance that they might be poisonous, they might be venomous, but by all means, they're just supposed to be a little bit spicy to us. Whereas they only create the toxins inside of the brain of the Galarian Slowking or even the Slowking OG itself. As such, the sap that comes out of their tails is said to be delicious and is now legal within the world of Pokemon, and I will not hesitate. And Namorous has caused me so much mental strife thanks to my encounters with it in Pokemon Legends Arceus, you can bet that I'm more than willing to eat the love-hate turtle herself as well. Eternatus and Eternamax may be my greatest mistake, as it is probably not poison type because of it being poisonous, but is quite literally a form of radiation, and that is why we get the giant kaiju Pokemon as a form of effect from it. So, while I'm more than willing to slurp up that dragon as if it was some ramen noodles, I may die afterwards, but I will die with a smile on my face and irradiation in my stomach. I feel bad, but Tyrunt and Amora, alongside its evolutions, are also here because I cannot resist eating a big old dinosaur. And can you just imagine how deliciously meaty they would all be? Zebstrika is here, Walking Wake is here, even though it's one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. How can you resist eating another dinosaur? I don't know what it is about dinosaurs in general. They all just seem tasty to me. Maybe it's the whole idea that I've never had dinosaur, despite modern day birds technically being dinosaurs, and I love eating avians by all means, even though I've only had chicken and turkey. It's good lean protein, okay? Can you blame me? I've already mentioned how I want to eat crickets covered in chocolate. This is why I have Cricketune and Cricketot here. Followed up by even my love for wanting to eat a scorpion. So we have Scorpion Drapion. Fairly self-explanatory. Groudon is just giant earth lizard that has magma throughout its body, so it'd just be great to eat. And then you have Clamperl and its evolutions. I'm gonna tell you something. Eel is by far one of my favorite things to eat, especially if I do get to go out for sushi. Though it is not eel specifically that is always that good, you can have it where it's this really thin meat, and it's delicious. They might fry it up, they throw it on top of the sushi, you name it. But it is eel sauce. That is where the real flavor comes in, or fish sauce for that matter. It is a delectable flavor that I cannot resist. And while I do have a genuine fear of looking at the Insanguinator that is the pink terror of Clamperl's evolution, Guribus, I would be more than happy to deal with the entire idea of me eating that eel. Despite me saying I don't really care about duck, Farfetch'd and its entire line are high up on this list because they represent or may be representative of the phrase, a duck comes bearing spring onions, which means that it is an easy target or a golden opportunity because duck is often said to pair incredibly well with spring onion. In other words, Farfetch'd probably went extinct due to the fact that it probably is incredibly delicious and granted the perfect opportunity for someone to eat it, because not only do you have your main meal, you have not even garnishing, but the extra flavoring that you need that pairs perfectly with it, walking right in front of you. Articuno and Galarian Articuno may taste like some cold wings that you got from leftovers from your time at a wing bar or at some sort of wing place, whatever it is that you get your wings from. That's what they're probably going to taste like, but it's got to be this weird mintiness to it that probably sounds gross, but would be irresistible to at least try to eat. Bidoof and Bibarel are here because Beaver is said to have a deep, woodsy character without any off flavors. It's lean, it's succulent, it has tons of flavor going on with it, and with two big, round, plump Pokemon right there, perfect for eating, I will not say no. I will immediately say yes. Give me the beaver. I will eat that beaver. Don't take that out of context. I know what I said about humanoid Pokemon, but something about Hariyama said I would eat it. Although its entire body is not fat, it is completely muscle, though it also has the move Salt Brine, which I feel like, very similar to Farfetch'd, is just a golden opportunity that I cannot pass up. Lickitung and its evolution, Licky Licky. I am a sucker, once again, for anything that is super fatty, because I don't know about you, but if I ever have a steak, I'm not cutting off the fat. I'm just taking extra time to cook all of that fat, season it, and it's gonna taste so much better than any other part of that steak somehow. And when I've already read about salamanders and how they could taste, and looking at these rotund Pokemon, I'm all in. We have Doduo and Dodrio, which follow the ostrich idea. You have Moltres and Galarian Moltres, which is already just a pre-cooked chicken bird. Then you have Zapdos and Galarian Zapdos. Once more, I see ostrich, even though that's not exactly what they are. If anything, Galarian Zapdos is absolutely more of a road runner. Lugia is the wall that stands tall, but it will not stand tall enough to get over the lid of my grill. I will eat a Lugia. There is nothing that I can base that on, but I am in anyway. If it is the parent to the rest of these, or at least the commander of the rest of these bird Pokemon, then the king of all birds, without being a bird, has got to be the best tasting bird in all of existence. Or at least one of the best tasting quote-unquote birds, because it's, again, not a bird. Torterra for all the fruit and nuts that it can bear. Tropius for the irresistible bananas that it does create. Then you actually have traditional Galarian Slowpoke and Slowpoke. Octillery, and then Clobbopus, which I've already talked about their lines. Then we have Quillfish, both its Hisuian form, regular form, and then Overquill. Another question you might ask at this point is, why would you eat the Hisuian form? Isn't that supposed to be more evil or more poisonous? And the answer is no. The only reason that they are a dark type is because during the Edo period, they were making the idea of eating these Pokemon, or rather in real life, the pufferfish, illegal, because it was poisoning and killing people. But once people started to learn how to properly prepare it, remove the poison, and go from there, they found that it was one of the most delicious fish of all time, giving you fugu. And that's why it turned from a dark type into the modern day Quillfish. It had to adapt, use its poison differently, and instead of sending spikes out, the poison just secretes through its skin. And just like real life pufferfish, it is thought that it is able to derive these toxins from whatever it eats. It stays in its body, but it only releases through its skin on contact, and through eating whatever organ is providing that. I have never had fugu, and I've been asked many times if I get the chance, will I eat it, even if there is a risk of death. And I say absolutely. The people who, serve fugu are people who are supposed to be multi-timed checked off on their ability to prepare it. Otherwise, yeah, you're killing somebody, and nobody wants to risk that. I never thought about it as well, but when I look at Pincurchin and it being a sea urchin, they're supposed to also have an incredible umami flavor. And if I already love that flavor and that idea, and I'm willing to eat a Quillfish, you bet I'm going to eat a sea urchin given the chance. Texture does not bother me. You'd probably be surprised to find a Alolan Raticate here, but Alolan Raticate is unlike any other Raticate or rat or mouse for that matter, due to the whole idea that it only eats fresh foods. And actually, it is so fat, so pudgy, because it eats so much high sugar fruit. It has got to be delicious. Alolan Raichu is only up here because it kind of looks delicious to me. I feel like if I did take a bite out of it, I would just get syrup and pancake in my mouth, and let me live in my fantasy, please. Mamoswine is just giant mammoth pig. Why would I say no? Followed up by Chonkachu being Gigantamax Pikachu. Dragon Knight is a dragon that completely feasts upon fish as its primary source of food. And we've talked about how I've already wanted to eat how many other dragons or fish-eating Pokemon. Togekiss is a dove, and even Mourning Dove is one of the most hunted, pigeons? birds, because I believe they're also pigeons and not really doves, in the United States, actually more specifically, I believe, within Wisconsin. Though now that I think about it, it's kind of messed up to say that I would eat the symbol of peace within the world of Pokemon. No regrets. Ursaluna is just fattier bear. Gyarados I would slurp up like a noodle. It's just another giant, more meaty eel that would feed the whole family. And then you actually have Clauncher, which is said to be a delicious meal. Occasionally, its claws will fall off, causing it to go into hiding until the claws grow back. The meat inside its claws is said to be delicious, however, it has a characteristic taste that is not universally loved. And then when it evolves into Clauncher, the claw itself is packed with meat, which can be used as a cooking ingredient. So if you're telling me that people within the world of Pokemon will absolutely nom on this one's claws, who am I to say no and avoid it when I already like shellfish or other forms of sea life in general as a meal? Crabrawler's pincers are a popular ingredient in paella, making it a tasty soup stock. So that one's already being used a lot. And then Crabominable is a whole other ball game because its detached pincers are said to have a delicious taste, to the point where some trainers have been known to use Lechonk just to find these pincers. They are said to be that irresistible that you would get a whole other Pokemon to help you find such a delectable claw. The Dragozolds, Arctozolds, any combination of those two Pokemon that create the 4 different Pokemon, they look tasty to me. They're either fish or big fat body, and I don't care which is which, I want them like a KFC bucket. Speaking of birds and KFC buckets, Reshiram has got to just be one giant spicy chicken. It is a fire type Pokemon, it is a big old dragon, and it just looks like an over-fancified chicken to me. Wishiwashi themselves are seen as small, weak, and notably tasty. They have numerous predators, including humans, alongside a number of other sea life. The problem with them is that they, in particular, if bullied or hunted, will become their full school form. But to me, that just means more fish, baby. I don't care how dangerous it is. The circle of life must continue a-spinning. So don't mind me as your professor nearly dies trying to hunt other Pokemon. Actually, all joking aside, I don't think I could really hunt down any of these Pokemon. I'd feel genuinely terrible. I'd probably actually try to go vegan, though I'd still be very scared if any of the beans that I eat, as I need my protein, would be Pokemon themselves. I'd have to work with some sort of group of plant type or grass type Pokemon to help me out. Darkspin and Fidough don't necessarily have to be eaten, though Darkspin is very tempting considering it has those big ol' soft bread ears. Though, again, if they use their yeast breath, you could just make a ton of bread and live your happy oven baking life. Basculin, specifically the blue and red striped Basculin, are said to be delicious while also being large Pokemon. The blue one is said to have a light, airy, very inoffensive flavor, while the red striped Basculin are fattier, thus meaning whatever extra meat or flavor that they would have, and is more popular with younger trainers or younger people within the world of Pokemon. Of course, I want the red striped Basculin myself. Now, it doesn't say anything about the white striped Basculin, it doesn't say anything about Basculegion, but the interesting part about Basculegion is that it's just a bigger fish with the spirits of its dead family attached to its tail. So maybe, if you're lucky, you can get that Basculegion to its end goal, and then you can eat it. Veluza is a very dark but interesting one, as Veluza's main method of hunting comes from its ability to shed its own flesh via its signature move, Fillet Away. This boosts its offensive prowess and psychic power, as well as its agility, giving it an easier time when chasing down and tearing apart prey. It can grow back its lost flesh due to its excellent regenerative capabilities, and the discarded flesh has a mild yet delicious flavor. This Pokemon rips itself apart, and someone out there said, I'm going to take that flesh and eat it. And bless their soul for being the first one to do that, because now I want to eat it. I already talked about how I will absolutely enjoy salmon skin if cooked right, and you're telling me this thing is supposed to have amazing flesh? Terrible, canonical, and something I would not be able to resist. You're gonna question me on this one, but Rayquaza and Mega Rayquaza turn them into a ramen. one delicious giant freaking ramen. Can you imagine taking those cords of light that Mega Rayquaza has and just slurping them up like noodles, let alone the rest of Rayquaza? Our ozone may fall to ruin, but at least I will have the most divine meal in my entire life. We have more eels, as we have Electric and Electros. We have actually Wiglet and Wugtrio, because technically they are garden eels, and those are really cool to look at in all respect to them, and aren't really eaten. But if you're that large and you're an eel, you're going on my plate. Get on top of my sushi, baby. Melodic is way up here. I imagine, even though it's an oarfish, it would be a phenomenal dragon sushi. I know it's not a dragon type, but look how colorful it is. Look how delicious it could potentially be. And speaking of delicious, we have the Rainbow Phoenix itself, arguably one of the best tasting birds, being Ho-Oh. Followed up with Chansey, where you can eat their eggs, and they are both nutritious and very filling, and I'm a big fan of eggs. Something about the Audino line screams to me that they would be delicious, and it overrides my inability to want to eat or not want to eat humanoid Pokemon. And before we get into our final line of Pokemon, we have Yveltal, the vulture that draws life from all things, the harbinger of death itself. Though it's probably not actually edible, and it probably would, end the world if you did end up trying to eat it. It's also based on the long-tailed widowbird, which is a really cool animal in the real world. So you can take a gander at that and be excited over the fact that it is it's a ridiculously long tail, and that's probably how it's just getting its mates. You've heard me express my love for venison, so could you be surprised by the idea that I would be willing to eat the rainbow deer that is Xerneas? Kyogre is the true fish of all fish. I guess it's not a fish considering that it is more of a whale, but bear with me here, as even its primal form just looks like it would be that much better, that much fattier or delicious. And to follow that idea of fattiness, Snorlax? Gigantamax Snorlax. Yes, it eats everything, but it's able to digest everything at the same time, meaning I'm willing to take the risk of it being potentially bad for me, or potentially an amazing meal, or let's be real, set of meals. You're not finishing a Snorlax in any one given go. Gigantamax Alchemy is just a 10 tier. I think maybe not. It's like a multi-tier cake in general. So can you blame me on that one? Blissey has an even better egg. Again, not eating Blissey or Chansey themselves, but Blissey itself does have an even more nutritious egg that you could just eat every day. Give me the infinite eggs that I am allowed to devour and make me the perfect specimen of a human being. Perfect nutrition, perfect protein. While I'm not a fan of raw sushi, we do have tatsugiri, which is just nigiri. And I do love me some sushi, as it is one of my favorite things to eat of all time. And while we're in the last 3 Pokemon that I will talk about, we are talking about the last true Pokemon that I would eat because of flavor, not just because of my inability to control myself given the opportunity, and again, assuming one last time that it was ethical to do so, I would devour Appletun skin as the children did within the world of Pokemon due to its delicious, sweet taste. Pie is a godsend. I cannot express that enough. It is one of the best meals in all of the universe. If somebody ever asks you, what one meal, what one food would you eat for the rest of your life? My answer will always be pie. You can have a sweet, fruity pie. You can have a vegetable pie if you really want to. You can have shepherd's pie, which is meat and vegetables. There are limitless possibilities, and they are a delicious concoction of food. What would yours be if I have to? You know what? Answer that question for me. If you could only pick one food to eat for the rest of your life, at least tell me that. As we move into our last 2 Pokemon, being Victini and Arceus. Yes, of course, Victini and Arceus. The being Victini that represents the goddess of victory. A creature that cannot lose and is infinite in its power. And then God itself. If you told me to eat upon your body and drink upon your blood, being the bread and the wine that makes up Arceus. Do you think that I would resist? If Arceus, the great god of llamas, set itself before me and gave me a steak of its own body, do you think I would be able to resist? No, let me taste the great cosmos. Let me taste the galaxies. Let me taste omniscience and omnipotence all at once. Grant me that, and I will be lost forever in its delectable and infinite flavor. Oh, I just realized I didn't talk about Sylveon in there. Hey, Sylveon, to make this very anticlimactic, would probably taste like a strawberry shortcake. I feel like if I just tried to eat Sylveon, it would be like cutting into those things where it's like, is it cake or is it real? Oh no, my wife is a cake. Everything's been a lie this whole time. So there you go. There's an anticlimactic way for me to end this, because none of this was scripted except for the very beginning of this video, and this was very freeing and very fun for me to do. So hopefully you did enjoy this. I can't do this for every single video. I just knew I could do this for this video in particular because I love food, and I already know so much about Pokemon and which ones are based on food, which ones you could eat, what animals they're based on. And again, if you enjoyed, please go check out my other videos if you haven't already and you are new to the channel. If you did enjoy, please ensure that you do subscribe, share this video with others, and again, leave a comment below, as watch time and comments are the #1 way to freely help a channel. Though, if you want to go the extra mile, and it would be greatly appreciated, please become a member of the channel through YouTube or Patreon, as that money just helps ensure that I can continue making videos and maybe one day commission my artist a little bit more to make even thumbnails, so that way I can focus more on the research aspect and the creating videos aspect of this. Basically, the more the channel is supported, the more that you will get in return. And one day, honestly, if I'm making way more money than I need to, I would love to be able to have you guys choose charities for that money to go to. But for now, I have to be able to pay my bills. And before we do go, one of the benefits of being a member of the channel is to hear your name shouted out at the end of every single video, which we're gonna go do right now. Starting with all of our gods of hope, Biggins, Heals for Life, and Vat 11. Then our champions, Andrew Mercedes, Costa, and Joshua Biggins Wilson. With our Knights of the Court, Vat 11, Crumbo, Fix My Nitrogen, Kill, Final Fantasy 14, Double Plow, Annie Stone, Allen, Heals for Life, and Warren Hempel. Then all of our wanderers of the channel, Avery, Koreshi, KD, Divine Chidori Phoenix, Fairy Fantasia, Jake Young, JC, Hero, Hip on Friday, Daniel Eats, April Ralston, Planet Blob, Marshy, Edward Kasowski, Puddin Fox, MN Ranger, Hawthorne, Andrew Tyson, Tashima, Zanzibar, Chef in a Bottle, Justin Green, JV Green, Minnie the Man, Minnie Tavis, Lamb, Fenica Fox, Ben Dover, Sporty Yamper, Evil Chan, Max Supreme, Octo Shade, Woomy, Charles Reed, Rose the Pink Haired Saiyan, Tyler, Darius Regan, Silver, Lazarus, Supporting Board, DPM, Pander, Nerdist, Freeberg, Lost Wisteria, Softy and Kai, Kamut Talk 123, High Guy, Kadabra, Deathstrong Gaming, King Pie, Jack of the Frost, Precious, Snivy, Ruby, Addie C, Jacob Square, DJ Monk 23, Squidwater, Rysmith, Gamer, Bad Dragonite, Just JM, Vanny Samaru, Star as MD, Horse, wait, is that a cocktail now? You added a cocktail to the end of it. Hey, Bale, Yeet, Micah626 Gaming, News, R. World, Olivia, Gwendo, Lynn, Eastscanner072, Andrew Frost, Pig Anonymous, Summit Slot, Knock Nguyen, Ian Ray, Big and C9, whatever this is, Corner of the Cop, Dylan Peters, Malachi Burkhardt, Carlisle, and Heather Wisen. Thank you all for being members of the channel. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you would like to hear your name at the end of the video, please become a member of the channel. And in fact, something I forgot to mention is that May 15th, 16th, 17th, I will be doing a membership marathon with rewards. Be there. I will be fighting people in Smash Ultimate, in Pokerogue, and in Pokemon Showdown, even Elden Ring at the end of it all. It is 3 days of tons of fun. It's going to be great, and donations not only help the channel, but also give back to you, as it helps me a ton. I don't know how else to say. I'm ever so slightly lightheaded every single time I do one of these. I'm also filling air because of the fact that the hard cold end credits haven't ended yet, and I know that they could go on for another 30 seconds, but I'm not going to go on for another 30 seconds. Either way, as always, thanks so much for watching. Don't you think I want to do? Don't you think I would do? Please be nice to each other. I love you, and I'll see you next time.